Chapter 1559 Inconceivably Strong. 1559 Inconceivably Strong. The elderly demon master looked at the hysteria demon master, swept his eyes over the other demon masters, and only then did he say, "You all have an objection too?" The overlord sword demon master took a step forward, and declared, "Outsiders are not welcome here." Ho ho! The elderly demon master chuckled, and said, "If you all have the ability to chase me off, I naturally will leave. Otherwise, just shut your mouths." All the demon masters glared at the old man, their eyes leaking a menacing coldness. "As an outsider, you actually dared to be so arrogant? Come and battle me!" the old man declared menacingly, acting extremely proud. The 5 young people he brought also crossed their arms over their chests. Looking at the arrogant expressions on their faces, they did not seem to take anyone seriously, not even these demon masters. This was a superiority that radiated from their very bones. A thought flashed in Ling Han's head. This kind of demeanor seemed very familiar. The overlord sword demon master did not say another word, and waved out a hand. A flash of sword light sliced towards the old man. This flash of sword light was only about a foot long, and looked very ordinary. But how could the attack of a demon master be anything ordinary? The old man smiled faintly, and pressed his hand down. He had gripped that flash of sword light in his hand, and with a squeeze, the sword light was forcibly obliterated, and did not give rise to any waves at all. Seeing this scene, all the demon masters showed an expression of shock. The overlord sword demon master obviously had not used his full strength, but he belonged to the top-grade category among yellow demons. Even a casual attack possessed astonishing might, yet it was dispersed in such a relaxed manner. The old man's abilities were unfathomably deep. If they started a life-and-death battle with this kind of elite, even if the 7 of them combined forces, it was possible that he could kill 1 or 2 of them in the process. Who would be willing to die when they had reached the height of demon master? The old man had used his abilities to prove that he indeed had the right to be standing here. Ho ho, for people of our level, resorting to violence is too much below our status. Why don't we allow our juniors to exchange a few moves? A female demon master spoke up. She was an old woman, and her hand held a crimson-red walking stick. She looked like a doddering old woman. But this walking stick was a saint tool, and possessed astonishing might. When the other demon masters heard this, they all nodded. Among these disciples and juniors of theirs, there were a few incredibly impressive existences, such as Emoli and Zhu Ba. Allowing them to confront each other in battle would both allow the battle to be carried out in a controllable manner, and also allow these outsiders to retreat willingly. The old man looked indifferent, and only showed a profound smile. He naturally knew clearly the line of thought of these demon masters. He turned around and said, "Amor, go and seek some guidance from these people." "Yes, 6th Elder." A young man walked out. He was very handsome, and had very fair skin, but there was a vague golden luster in his complexion. He swept an eye over the many young people gathered here with a smile, and said, "I am 10mo. Who would be sparring with me?" The overlord sword demon master and the other elites paused slightly, and then spoke up. "Mo Li sword Dao Yun He, it will be the 3 of you. Send 3 of yours out as well," the hysteria demon master said to the old man. The old man merely smiled, and replied, "No need, 1 person is enough." You wanted to have a 1 versus 3 battle? It should be known that Emoli, Zhu Ba, and Yun He were all the strongest elites of the Eternal River Tier, and all of them had formed more than 1,000,000 stars. If it were not for the fact that the regulations of Genesis Tier were too difficult to comprehend, they would have become demon masters long ago. "I'll go first," Zhu Ba said. He also had his own pride, and naturally would not be willing to combine forces with others. Tanmo was indifferent and said, "Make your move." He acted very calm, like he was giving some guidance to a lackey. Fury rose up in Zhu Ba's heart. He took a step forward, and shot out a punch from afar. There were a great many demon masters present, so there was absolutely no need for him to be reserved. He used his full abilities in his first move, and had no need to worry that the aftermath, and shock waves would cause too much destruction. Tan-mo pressed the palm down lightly, and a silvery river suddenly appeared, multiple stars shattering within, presenting a terrifying scene. This was not as ordinary as merely a frightening scene, its might was even more terrifying. It gave rise to waves that could destroy the world, and they blasted out towards Zhu Ba. Zhu Ba dared not take this attack head-on, and hurriedly leaped up, avoiding this blow. Even the demon masters were stunned. How could this guy's power be so strong? Just how many stars had he formed? Though an eternal river-tear could form innumerable stars theoretically, this was merely theory. In truth, once one had formed more than 1,000,000 stars, because he had not unlocked the upper limit of his cultivation level. Forming every additional star was extraordinarily difficult, and it would become more and more difficult as time went on. Even for those as strong as Emily and the others, they had only formed around 1,100,000 stars. This was a publicly acknowledged upper limit. No matter how freakishly talented you were, you would only attain this point and no further. Then, how could Tan-mo have such overwhelming power? Tan-mo took the initiative to attack. He merely struck out with palm strikes, and did not use any kind of secret technique, but because his power was really too strong, it had reached a completely overwhelming point. What need was there for him to use any kind of secret technique? Everyone paled. Zhu Ba was the synonym for the strongest of the eternal river-tear in their hearts. But now he was evading like he was a duck that was being chased to and fro. He did not even have the ability to fight back, which stunned all of them. "You all come at me too!" Tan-mo pressed down a palm again, and pulled both Emily and Yun-hee into the battle. 3 great big shots of the eternal river-tear joined forces, but it was useless. Tan-mo was like the heavenly emperor of many realms, able to suppress all with a single palm. The 3 big shots were all no match for him, and could only retreat and dodge repeatedly. "Enough!" The Hysteria Demon Master waved a hand, and stopped the battle. Then, he asked the old man, "How should I address you, my friend? From whence have you come?" The old man chuckled. "I am Tan Feng, and I come from Dongchang." Dongchang? What galaxy or planet was this? The demon masters all looked at one another, and could see confusion in each other's eyes. "Friend Tan, your disciples may all enter. However, as there is a force on the level of Black Demon, at least, if we enter, we would become the target of attack of this force. Thus, we all need to wait here," the old female demon master explained. Tan Feng showed a hint of surprise, but he immediately withdrew his shock. He nodded and said, "Amor, take good care of your clansmen." "Understood." Tan-mo nodded respectfully. Then, he nodded at his 4 clansmen. They took the lead in entering into the stone arch doorway. Once they passed through, their figures became endlessly smaller, and then disappeared from view. Even the demon masters could no longer catch sight of them. The others all looked livid. This clearly was an ancient site that they had discovered, and not only did they have to share it with outsiders now, the latter even entered the ancient site before them. But if they encountered these 5 people inside the ancient site, they unfortunately could only avoid them. Tan-mo was too strong. "Go on!" Ling Han and the others also walked towards the stone arch doorway one after another. Their figures disappeared in succession, and when they reappeared, they had already entered into the ancient site. There was an endless and boundless ocean before their eyes. This was expected because they could already see this from the outside. However, because they had not experienced it personally, they could not imagine just how wide and expansive this massive ocean was. The first step was to cross the ocean. Ling Han stood in midair. Ahead of him, a great many people were already in the midst of crossing the ocean, and there was completely no trace of Tan-mo and his group who had been the first to enter. "There is something I need here." Small Tower suddenly spoke up. Chapter 1560 Massive Waves. 1560 Massive Waves. Ling Han stared blankly and asked, "What is that?" "Chaos Source Rock," Small Tower replied. "It was that thing again." Ling Han nodded and said, "I will get it for you if I get the chance." "Not just a chance, but it is an absolute must for you to get it." Small Tower declared solemnly. This Chaos Source rock is extremely large. I can sense the waves of source power from it even from so far away. If I can extract the power contained within, it would be greatly beneficial to my recovery. Ling Han thought for a moment, and asked, Beneficial to what extent? You can get one chance for a power boost, Small Tower said calmly. Ling Han's eyes lit up. How strong would it be? You can defeat all below the Celestial King tier. Gasp. Ling Han revealed an expression of shock. Though he did not know in what level Celestial Kings were considered to be in the Celestial Realm, but to be able to lay claim to the name of Celestial King meant they could be considered kings in the Celestial Realm. If they were not at the top level, who would dare use this name? Right, I will definitely get it for you. He made his decision. With this power boost, he would be able to sweep aside all opposition in one Forbidden Land. If all the saints of the Forbidden Land had left, he would be able to conquer it completely. You are indeed thinking of nothing but personal gain, snob! Small Tower retorted in disdain. Ling Han was speechless. Would this proud tower be unable to sleep easy if it did not mock him at least once a day? Where is it? He asked. He had long since learned to ignore Small Tower's poisonous tongue. At the top of the mountain in the middle of the ocean. Ling Han stared into the distance. The mountain peak that was initially only a few hundred meters tall had practically pierced through the clouds in this place. Even if he was an endlessly long distance from it, he could still vaguely see its outline. Despicable guy, we're leaving! Wu Ju's voice rang out. Ling Han looked over. Emoli was already leading the group to cross the ocean. Not just them, the others were also crossing the ocean. There were 10 in each group, and they all drew out their precious tools that were capable of flight. There were ships, lotus flower stages, and bowls, but they were all flying in midair. Not one of them was traveling in the water. He followed suit. With a leap, he had already arrived on the small boat that Emoli was steering. This was a lone raft, and looked like it could only accommodate about 10 odd people. Whilst it was rapidly traveling, sharp winds blasted at them, causing them to feel as if their skin was being sliced by sharp knives. Thankfully, as long as they activated their origin power as defense, this did not pose much of a threat. Ling Han was uncaring. His physique was too strong, so even when the strong winds hit him, they were not the slightest bit of threat to him. The flying raft pierced through the air, and the disciples and juniors of the 17 demon masters all formed a row. None stood in front of the others. This seemed very calm and peaceful. Though the ocean was overwhelmingly huge, they would probably be able to reach the other side in about a few months' time. Why was it said that a great many people did not even manage to cross the ocean? A few hours soon passed. Though there would be occasionally a few waves rolling out in the ocean, it was still considerably peaceful. Suddenly, Ling Han's eyes snapped open. He stood up. He saw that there was a white line in the distance that was rapidly approaching them, and it was at an extraordinarily rapid pace at that. Despicable guy, what are you making a fuss for? Wu Ju immediately demanded. He simply did not like Ling Han. A wave is here! Yet Emoli's expression was one of utmost seriousness. Make a formation, let's withstand it together. Aside from Ling Han and Wu Ju, the others all looked solemn. It was clear that they had long since known what that was. Ling Han sighed. Though he had been pulled in, he was still completely in the dark. He had absolutely no idea what the exact situation was in this Ocean Dragon Mountain mystery realm. At present, he only knew that there was a Chaos Source rock. It was very big, and could be used to recover the Black Tower, allowing him to have a chance for a power boost, and being able to easily kill many great elites even from the Celestial Realm. He did not dare be careless either. If one dared relax his guard in a mystery realm, that was just courting death. The white line was coming closer and closer. Ling Han could already clearly see that it was indeed a wave, but it was too frightening. It was 3,000 meters tall, and it was like a whole mountain was about to slam into them. Can't we fly the flying raft above 3,000 meters? He asked. It was not only them. The other flying tools that the others were aboard did not rise up either. Instead, they chose to confront the wave head-on. No! Emily shook her head. Above 3,000 meters, the strong winds are very frightening, and the precious tool would immediately be destroyed. Ling Han nodded. He knew that there was definitely a reason that Emily and the others had done so. It was only that he did not know what that reason was. Boom! The massive wave was rolling out too quickly. In a mere instant, one could already hear a huge commotion. This was very inconceivable. It was clear that the massive wave was rolling out at a speed that had exceeded the full speed dash of most eternal riveteers, yet the sound of it reached them first. Get ready! Emily called out loudly. Everyone concentrated, and their power soared to the limit. The massive waves slammed into them. One, the flying raft immediately released an ear-piercing noise. That was the sound of the material that was used to build the precious tool currently sustaining a great pressure. Pa! Suddenly 3 people were sent flying by the wave. Ling Han, being sharp-sighted and deft, forcibly pulled these 3 people back. Pun. The flying raft sank into the wave's wall. All of them were being struck by the wave. The defensive origin power of a large number of them was instantly obliterated. Then, their faces turned ashen as they coughed up copious amounts of blood. However, though the wave's wall was very thick, this wave was really rolling out too quickly. It was truly just a blink of the eye, and the wave had passed them. Wu Ju and the others all slumped onto the ground. The little bottom was still fine, and did not sustain any injury. Ling Han had seen clearly that there was a flash of white light on this brat's chest. It should have been a precious tool that had activated and blocked the impact of the huge wave. However, the others were not so lucky. A few of them broke some bones, and they were moaning there with pale faces. Oh no! Emily's expression was solemn. Her eternally wooden face was actually wearing a frown. Our luck is not so good this time. We actually encountered the fiercest tides. Then I'm going back first. You guys go on ahead, work hard, Wu Ju immediately declared. He still wanted to tempt the heavenly phoenix divine maiden away from Ling Han's side, yet did not know that she was presently together with Ling Han. Emily humphed and retorted, The moment one enters this mystery realm, there is no way out. You can only wait for the 3 years to be up, and be naturally expelled from this mystery realm, so just give up the idea. Wu Ju slumped onto the ground, wanting to cry but having no tears. Ling Han shook his head. He was really rendered speechless by this kid. Then, he asked Emily, What's going on with these waves? In the past, the demon masters had come here, and deduced that there should have been a supreme great elite that had died in the ocean. Thus, it created waves in the ocean, and there are naturally shards of the regulations that great elite had grasped embedded within them. They possess frightening destructive power, Emily said. Furthermore, we have just reached the ocean, so the power of the waves should be at their weakest, but based on my experience, the might of the waves now has already reached the level of traveling midway across the ocean in the past. This can be claimed to be one of the most frightening tides in history. When Qi Huangji and the others heard this, they were all very depressed. They had only managed to enter into this ocean dragon mountain mystery realm with much difficulty, and to their great misfortune, they encountered a year of calamity. Whom could they voice the injustice to? Before the next wave hits, let's quickly leave. Emily thought for a moment. Though the massive waves are frightening, the shards of regulations of that great elite would also nurture natural treasures. The last time I entered, I saw a divine bamboo with 9 segments. This time, it will probably be flowering and bearing fruit. It was not easy for bamboo to flower. Once it did, it meant that it was close to the end of its lifespan. At the conclusion of its life, a divine bamboo would pour all the essence that it had accumulated in its lifetime into the fruit that would be born after the flower bloomed. This was a precious treasure, a great herb that even demon masters and saints would be tempted by. Chapter 1561 Caught Up. 1561 Caught Up. Ling Han's eyes suddenly lit up. What he lacked was precisely saintly medicine. Emily continued to steer the raft forwards, while the others all did their best to recover their vitality. After a few more hours, there would be another barrage by a massive wave. If they could not recover to their prime condition before that, the negative effects would endlessly accumulate, and would definitely result in serious injury. The other groups did not seem to be any better, especially those groups without such super elites like Mo Li, Zhu Ba, and Yun He on standby. They were all bruised and battered. A few hours later, the second huge wave came as expected. Pun! In the midst of the fierce barrage, a considerable number again coughed blood and experienced broken bones, and the flying raft was also undergoing a serious test. Going by this trend, let alone reaching the mountain peak in the middle of the ocean, it would be a problem for them to even travel 1/3 of the way there. The ship will be destroyed in the end, but before that, we'll try to get as close as possible, Emoli said. If she was the only one on this journey, she naturally would not need to use whatever flying raft. She only had to physically fly there. However, her main reason for entering here was to take care of these junior sisters and junior brothers of hers. Thus, the flying raft was the best option. It could allow these junior sisters and brothers to get as much time as possible to adjust. However, though the massive waves this time were frightening, Ling Han was also on board, and if he used his full battle prowess, he was in no way inferior to Emoli, so it naturally allowed this group of theirs to have a much easier time than the others with the combined effort and help of these two great big shots. It could be seen that Ling Han's group of 10 were already in the lead. The other dozen or so groups, meanwhile, were quite a distance behind. Furthermore, they no longer advanced together at the same pace. Those groups that had a big shot on standby were in front, and those without were behind. The poorer their abilities, the farther behind they were. There's something ahead! Ling Han's eyes were focused on the surface of the ocean. He stretched out his hand, and origin power formed a huge hand that grabbed out at the ocean's surface. No! Emoli hurriedly advised. But it was too late. Ling Han had already scooped up the ocean's water, and withdrew the large hand. When he opened his palm, he saw that there was some duckweed in his grasp, and it had borne a small silvery chestnut. Spiritual treasure silver chestnut! Emoli's eyes lit up, and then she revealed a sliver of shock. Your hand is actually unwounded! Spiritual treasure silver chestnut, a level 16 godly medicine, could be used to concoct various kinds of high-grade divine pills, and could be considered one of the very best among saintly medicines. Ling Han was very pleased, and put the silver chestnut away into the black tower. Then he asked, "Why would my hand be wounded?" How could she curse him like that? A disciple answered, "Brother Ling, don't forget that there are shards of regulations belonging to a supreme great elite in the ocean's water. Dipping your hand into the water would be equivalent to colliding with these shards of regulations. It would easily wound even a big shot. Otherwise, why would we choose not to travel underwater? If they traveled underwater, it would perhaps be slightly slower, but they would be able to avoid the massive waves, and it was much safer." But hearing these words from him, it was indeed impossible to travel underwater. That would be equivalent to taking the initiative to confront the huge waves at all times. If they emerged from the experience without severe wounds, that would be the true strange thing. So that was the case. Ling Han nodded. It looked like his physique was indeed too strong, and even the shards of regulations could not wound him. This definitely corresponded to cultivation level. The higher the cultivation level, the more impact would be felt. However, his physique had far surpassed his cultivation level, so he was naturally completely unscathed. The flying raft advanced, and as they continued to venture deeper into this ocean, they could also see a great many godly medicines on their way. The majority of them ended up in Ling Han's pocket, but he did not spend the time to harvest some of them, due to the distance factor. Because they had not seen Tan Mo and his group all this while, it meant that those 5 people were still ahead of them. If they delayed too much on their journey, that divine bamboo would fall into the hands of others. That was saintly medicine, and even 10,000 high-grade godly medicines could not compare to it. In truth, Ling Han really did not lack godly medicines. Previously, when he had been in the Medicine King's cave, he had harvested a great many. Otherwise, He could not possibly simply concoct any kind of eternal river tier-level divine pill as he liked like he could at present. The massive waves here adhered to their own rhythm. There would be a wave about every 12 hours, which just happened to be half a day's time. After they had experienced a total of 27 waves, they had completely thrown off the 16 groups behind them from their tail, and they finally spotted Tan Mo's group in front. These 5 people were actually seated on a spread-out scroll. It was very big, and was 30 meters long and 9 meters wide. It was completely golden, and there were densely packed characters which rose up into multiple demonic patterns written on it. Each demonic pattern seemed capable of suppressing eternity. Ling Han and his group spotted Tan Mo and their group, and the latter clearly spotted them as well. They all looked disdainful, and 2 of them even used their hands to form insulting gestures. "Emoli, catch up with quickly, we'll beat these bastards to death!" Wu Ju howled in fury. Yet Emoli's expression was solemn, and she coldly commanded, "Do not make trouble!" Tan Mo was too strong. He had even surpassed the level of a big shot, and he could be claimed to be a pseudo-demon master. She even suspected that great elites that had just reached demon master tier might be far inferior to Tan Mo in terms of power. Wu Ju pouted, looking completely like a little bottom. Tan Mo sat cross-legged in the foremost position. He also turned his eyes their way, and there was some surprise in his gaze, as if he was confused how Ling Han and his group could have possibly caught up to them. It should be known that the scroll that they were astride was not an ordinary object, but a decree that was personally written by a heaven demon. The strongest regulations of heaven and earth of the netherworld were condensed within. But even so, they still experienced much strain when they were being barraged by the huge waves. The shards of regulations embedded in these huge waves would be stronger the stronger their foe was, and even the decree of a heaven demon could not suppress them. But with the decree of a heaven demon, they definitely had a large advantage over everyone else. They should have left those people behind them farther and farther behind, so how could it be possible that others would catch up with them? Tan Mo's expression was like a smile yet not a smile, and a hint of killing intent leaked into his eyes. This was a very clear warning. Don't even think of trying to catch up, or he would definitely not be reserved. Emoli and the others naturally saw this kind of warning clearly, and they were all furious. This mystery realm belonged to their 17 demon masters. You all were only outsiders, and not only did outsiders like you overwhelm your hosts, you actually dared to be so imperious. How preposterous! Tan Mo withdrew his gaze and looked ahead. He was completely indifferent about the reactions of Ling Han and his group. In his eyes, they were all absolute trash. Even if they were defiant, so what? Did they actually dare come close? If they did, he would dare to kill them. Too arrogant! Qi Huangji and the others all grumbled. Ling Han did not say a word. At present, he did not have a conflict of interest with Tan Mo yet, but once the 9-segment divine bamboo was found, if a fight started, and that was practically a confirmed matter, then he would not shrink back either. He would deal with him with the divine demon's sword. It could be claimed that even if Hu Feng caught up with him at this time, Ling Han would dare confront him head-on too. Of course, it would only be 1 or 2 strikes. More than that, and he would still have to retreat, but he even dared to stand against the saint, so what worth did you, a pseudo-demon master or semi-demon master, have? The person who laughed last would laugh best. Boom! It was at this moment that the 28th huge wave rolled out towards them from afar. The decree that Tan Mo's group was aboard immediately exploded in a burst of golden light, as if a demon master was about to walk out from within, forcibly slicing a passageway through the massive wave. Yet the huge wave was indeed not to be trifled with either. Multiple seals lit up in the ocean water and began to attack them. As the wave swept over them, Tan Mo's group all paled. Even the speed of progression of the decree had sharply decreased. At this time, Ling Han and the others also greeted the incoming huge wave. Boom! Chapter 1562 Harvesting Frui. 1562 Harvesting Frui. Outside. Tan Feng continuously circled around the ancient site. On the outside, it was only 3,000 meters wide and a few hundred meters high. As this powerful demon master circled, he was calculating by his knuckles. If Ling Han had seen this, he would definitely have been incredibly stunned. This was making a prediction. Even someone as strong as the Star Sand Saint was unable to predict the affairs of the world. This seemed to be a secret technique that belonged solely to the Forbidden Lands, and could also possibly be an ability that only the 8 Stones Forbidden Land possessed. But now, Tan Feng had that ability too. Just where exactly had he come from? Extraordinary! Extraordinary! Tan Feng's eyes became brighter and brighter. This is definitely not left behind by any black demon. A black demon does not possess such strong power to be able to block off my prediction. Even a heaven demon could not. I would still be able to find out 1 or 2 clues. This definitely must have fallen from the celestial realm. In that great turmoil those eons ago, who knows how many powerful forces have been overthrown, and it would not be strange for the ancient sites of the celestial realm to appear in the immortal realm. This is not something that a few juniors can deal with, even I could not. There is a need to ask the Grand Elder to come personally. He unobtrusively walked to one side and drew out a stone, which he spoke a few words to. A wave that even the demon masters were not able to grasp was already being transmitted to the depths of the universe, and in an instant, the message traversed millions and millions of miles. Though the Overlord Sword Demon Master and the others turned to look at him, they did not discover anything off. Even for those as strong as they were, there were in truth a great many things that they were not aware of. Boom! The huge wave swept over them, and multiple cracks had already appeared on the flying raft. It looked like it definitely would not survive the next wave. Emoli directly drew out a second flying raft, and everyone switched onto it. The first raft was allowed to drop into the ocean. Their distance from Tan Mo and his group was a little smaller now. Emoli steered the flying raft, but did not catch up to them. Tan Mo showed an expression of arrogance. Because there were shards of regulations in the waves, he could not see how Ling Han and his group had dealt with the barrage of the massive wave, but it was obvious that these people were very wary of him. They didn't even dare to approach him too close. They were merely a few ants of the netherworld. After traveling a further while, a green bamboo appeared ahead of them. It was protruding from the wide ocean just like that. It could already be seen even when there were at least a few thousand miles separating them from it. It was clear how wide and tall this green bamboo was. They had found it, the 9-segment divine bamboo. Tan Mo and his group naturally saw it as well because they slightly changed their course and headed towards that divine bamboo. Emoli frowned slightly. Once Tan Mo and his group wanted to snatch that divine bamboo, how was she to stop them? Putting aside the fact that there were only herself and Ling Han here, even if all the disciples and juniors of the 17 demon masters were all here in combined forces, they might not be able to stop Tan Mo either. His strength had reached an overwhelming extent, and the advantage of numbers was completely insufficient to compensate for this gap in power. But to give up just like this, she was definitely unwilling. Follow them. There was absolutely no need to spend too much time to cross a distance of a few thousand miles for a flight god tool. In a short while, they had already come endlessly close to this divine bamboo. It was really too huge. Merely the part that was sticking out from the ocean bed was already 30,000 meters tall, and it was several hundred meters wide. Furthermore, at the top of the divine bamboo, a green fruit could clearly be seen. Even from such a far distance, a refreshing fragrance could vaguely be smelt. The divine bamboo is already dead, Emoli said slowly. They had never thought that she would actually have such an emotional side to her. This divine bamboo was indeed already dead. Though the body of the divine bamboo still had divine seals of great Tao floating on it, its vitality had already disappeared. However, at the top, that green fruit was still flourishing with life. This was a fruit that the divine bamboo had poured all its essence into. A precious treasure. The body of the bamboo could be made into a demonic tool, while the fruit was a supremely valuable medicine. Get down here! Tan Mo suddenly shot out a fist at the body of the bamboo, wanting to shake this fruit down with brute force. He previously should have tried this before. The air here was filled with a frightening pressure, and even he dared not be rash. When densely packed seals on the body of the bamboo lit up, but they returned to an undisturbed state very soon. It did not even tremble. What a joke! This was saintly material here, and you thought you could deal a shock to it. Tan-mo involuntarily frowned. He couldn't climb up, and the fruit would not drop down from being shaken, so what was to be done? Furthermore, he also wanted to collect this divine bamboo. If he refined it to the length of a few feet, it would definitely be a supreme demonic tool. Ling Han stood up and said, "You guys wait a while for me." Without waiting for Mo Li and the others to react, he was already soaring upwards into the skies. This guy was planning to fly directly to the top of the divine bamboo and harvest the fruit. This guy's physique is astonishing, so perhaps he really does have a chance, someone said. But Tan-mo and his group are just watching from the sidelines. Even if Ling Han got it, they would be snatching it, right? Once he gets it, we will flee as quickly as possible. I am sure they will not be able to catch up. That's right, the fact that we managed to catch up to them clearly means that our speed is faster than theirs. Everyone was conversing excitedly. At this time, even Wu Ju did not set himself against Ling Han, and proposed ideas from the sidelines. However, Mo Li's expression was grave. She had exchanged blows with Tan-mo before, and had a real idea of how powerful the latter was. If Ling Han really succeeded, that decree might indeed be unable to catch up to them, but wouldn't Tan-mo be able to attack them on his own? He absolutely did not need the decree to be able to sweep aside all eternal river tears. That level of strength was practically enough to make anyone hopeless. But Ling Han had already flown up into the skies, so they could only proceed with caution now. When he came back down, they would act according to the circumstances. Tan-mo and his group also saw Ling Han's action, and couldn't help but scoff in disdain. What an idiot! Even we do not dare to exceed the height of 3,000 meters, and this brat actually deludes himself into thinking about flying up directly to harvest the divine fruit. He is really out of his mind. Ignore him! Brother Mo, with this divine bamboo being so sturdy, it is completely impossible to shake the divine fruit down, so what do we do? Tan-mo pondered for a moment, and then said, "The value of this mystery realm possibly far surpasses the estimation of those demon masters outside. I think Lord Sixth Elder should have already informed the clan, and by then, even if Grand Elder does not personally come, either Fifth Elder or Fourth Elder will definitely come. The whole mystery realm will be ours." "That's right, it's all ours," the other four young people all proudly declared, considering this to be inevitable and right. They looked at Ling Han. Though they were sure that he definitely would not be able to succeed, they did not leave. In any case, the distance of 30,000 meters could be crossed in a short while for eternal river tier, so it would not be too late for them to leave once they witnessed his failure. Ling Han shot through the air, and as his altitude increased, he gradually felt a pressure exerted on him. The air itself was like knives, and was incredibly sharp. However, this was completely not enough to wound him. His speed did not decrease, and he rushed madly all the way. Very soon, he had broken through the forbidden elevation of 3,000 meters, and was still shooting upwards. No way! Seeing this scene, Chi Huangji and the others were all dumbfounded. They knew that Ling Han's physique was astonishing, but they did not have a substantial idea of how strong it was. Now, with a clear comparison, they couldn't help but gape. On Tan-mo's side, those four were also exchanging looks and rendered speechless, yet Tan-mo's eyes lit up, a smile curling up the corners of his lips. If Ling Han could harvest it, that would be good too. It would be just right to benefit him instead. Chapter 1563 The Broken Wooden Sword Shows Its Migh. 1563 The Broken Wooden Sword Shows Its Migh. When he had reached the height of 24,000 meters, Ling Han also felt strained. It was not that his physique couldn't hold up to the pressure, but rather that the pressure here was too heavy, and formed a powerful hindrance. If he wanted to go further up, he would have to pay an exorbitant price. He could barely still persist, but when he reached 27,000 meters, he could not fly any further up no matter how hard he tried. This was the limit. Ling Han was unwilling to give up. The divine fruit was just 3,000 meters away, and he could smell its strong fragrance from here, causing every pore on his body to open up. If he could directly consume it, the effects would definitely be shockingly great. But how was he to get hold of it? He stopped, and sliced out a palm at the top of the bamboo. The force of his palm strike turned into sword chi, which was astonishingly sharp. But there was also an unknown might in the air here. When he blasted out the sword chi, it was being continuously erased in the process of flying over, as if it was affected by tide of the ages. However, the tide of the ages was the power of time, and this was another kind of power that directly destroyed it. This flash of sword chi merely shot out 90 meters away, and was then completely dispersed. The gap was too big. Ling Han shot out the annihilating dragon star arrow, but it only widened this distance to 210 meters. He did not use the ultimate arrow. As he thought, even if he could shoot it out more than 10 times the distance, so what? It was still impossible to reach a distance of 3,000 meters. Was there any other way? Ling Han thought for a moment, then drew out the broken wooden sword, and stabbed it into the body of the bamboo. 1. The sword's tip pierced into the body of the bamboo. Suddenly, multiple seals shone on the divine bamboo, resisting the broken wooden sword. It should be known that though the broken wooden sword was battered and run down, if one received a direct strike from it, even saints and demon masters would be killed. As expected of saintly material. This result was also within Ling Han's expectations. After all, they were both saintly materials. He merely wanted to give it a try. He was just about to withdraw the sword when he saw that multiple demonic patterns were also glowing on the broken wooden sword. This was strange. He had not used his origin power to activate it at all. The broken wooden sword had awakened automatically. He naturally dismissed the plans to withdraw the broken wooden sword, and instead watched on quietly. The broken wooden sword's demonic patterns all glowed, and a frightening black chi was simultaneously exuding from it. That represented the regulations of the netherworld. It was filled with murderous intent, causing even Ling Han's eyes to become bloodshot, and made him feel an urge to slaughter everything in this world. He hurriedly guarded his divine sense. No matter how strong a tool was, it was still a tool, and should only be controlled. The opposite definitely could not be allowed to happen. With the PU, the broken wooden sword actually stabbed into the body of the bamboo. At first, Ling Han was stunned, which was quickly followed by joy. He hurriedly exerted force in his grip on the sword hilt. He wanted to slice the divine bamboo in half, and that divine sword at its top would naturally become his. However, only now did he know how sturdy saintly material was. The broken wooden sword seemed to have taken root in the bamboo, and he couldn't move it at all. If this demonic sword did not show its might on its own, he could do absolutely nothing against the divine bamboo. Ling Han was startled. What was he to do? Could it be he would lose a divine sword in the process of trying to get the divine fruit instead? Wait, no. He looked at where the broken wooden sword had pierced into the body of the bamboo, and saw that the bamboo that had initially been as green as jade actually showed a sliver of sallowness. He blew out a breath of air, and the yellow and withered part of the bamboo suddenly turned into dust, which floated in the air. Ling Han's heart jolted. This broken wooden sword seemed to have the ability of swallowing as well, though what it swallowed was not metal, but rather the 9-segment divine bamboo that was similarly of the wood element. The 9-segment divine bamboo lightly trembled. One after another, bamboo leaves fell, light as feathers, but this was saintly material here. One fallen leaf also carried frightening destructive power. How could Ling Han possibly dare allow even one to touch him? He continuously dodged and evaded in midair. The speed of absorbing of the broken wooden sword seemed to become faster and faster. Ling Han could clearly see that the withered part that the sword had penetrated was expanding both upwards and downwards, spreading out over the whole body of the bamboo. After about a few hours, he could see a green fruit fall down from the skies. That was the fruit borne by the 9-segment divine bamboo, because even the branch that was connected to the fruit had had its essence extracted, and could no longer bear the fruit. Ling Han quickly made his move. He wrapped his divine sense around it, and directly drew it into the Black Tower. Now, no one would be able to take it from him. Boom! The whole divine bamboo crumbled, all its divine essence was swallowed by the broken wooden sword, and it decayed. Meanwhile, there was actually a battered part of the broken wooden sword that had recovered. Its color was clearly slightly brighter. Ling Han was shocked, and asked Small Tower, "Is this sword also on the level of a celestial tool?" "Tisk!" Small Tower scoffed coldly as if it was filled with disdain. "Will you die if you speak nicely?" Ling Han began to threaten it. "Otherwise, don't even think about the Chaos Source Rock." Only now did Small Tower concede, and replied, "Natural selection is an ironclad rule of heaven and earth. Both of them belong to the wood element, so they naturally would be able to swallow each other. But on the question of becoming a celestial tool, that is truly wishful thinking. As far as I know, among wood element materials that could become celestial tool, there are only a mere 3 types. What are they?" Ling Han's curiosity was incited greatly. "There is no need for you to know at present," Small Tower declared impatiently. "Go and get that Chaos Source Rock." Sai, was this his precious tool or his master? Ling Han shook his head, but did not bicker with Small Tower. He knew its personality very well. He flew downwards, internally very pleased. He had gotten a divine sword, and also helped the broken wooden sword get a certain degree of upgrade. Though it was completely looked down on and disdained by Small Tower, before he entered into the celestial realm, this should be an incredibly powerful precious tool for him. "Hand over the saint fruit, as well as that sword." Tan Mo stood in his path and said such words in a neutral tone, as natural as if he was a senior issuing a command to his junior. At this time, there were flight god tools approaching from the distance. That was Zhu Ba Yunhe and the others. Though they had been left very far behind, Ling Han had also spent a very long time to harvest the divine fruit, which was enough time for them to catch up. The flight god tools stopped one after another. At first, everyone was unsure what was going on, but after Chief Wangji and the others explained, they naturally understood the situation. Mo Li, Zhu Ba, and Yunhe all stepped out and declared, "Whatever one attains in the mystery realm is based on one's own strength. If you want to take something by force, you will have to pass through us. Just a group of trash, do you think I do not dare to kill you all?" Tan Mo asked coldly. At first, he had disdain from even attacking this group of ants, but the saintly medicine was much too important. Even their clan only possessed 2 such treasures. Furthermore, they hadn't ripened yet, and could not be used. If he could ingest a saint fruit, the benefits would naturally be shocking. It was definitely nothing that these country bumpkins could imagine. Giving it to these people? That was an absolute waste and insult. "We don't believe you dare." Zhu Ba Yunhe and the others shook their heads. There were 17 demon masters on standby outside. "Do you dare mess around?" Tan Mo revealed a dreadful grin. "What you all are doing is courting death." He leaped out, and charged over at Mo Li, Zhu Ba, and the others. A silvery river appeared around him, densely packed with stars. There were too many than could be counted. Gods. This, innumerable, was in the relative sense of the word. With the eyes of the eternal riveteer, it naturally was not a problem to count them. Once they saw how many stars Tan Mo possessed, everyone trembled. More than 2,500,000 stars! Chapter 1564 Slaying a Big Sho. Chapter 1564 Slaying a Big Sho. This was inconceivable. Zhu Ba Emoli, and some others had all surpassed the pinnacle level of the eternal riveteer, and formed over 1 million heavenly bodies. However, it would be incredibly difficult for them to form any more. If the difficulty of a demon master forming an extra heavenly body on top of their foundational 1 million was assigned a value of 1, then the difficulty of an eternal riveteer elite achieving this would have a value of 100. Moreover, this difficulty would continue to increase as one formed more and more heavenly bodies. The value of difficulty would grow from 100 to 1,000, and 1,000 to 10,000. Thus, It was widely acknowledged that forming 1,100,000 heavenly bodies was the pinnacle limit for eternal river tier elites. It would be impossible to surpass this number. However, this ironclad rule had been shattered now. Tan-Mo had created a miracle and surpassed this number by a huge amount, no less. Over 2 million heavenly bodies. What kind of concept was this? No wonder Emoli and the others hadn't been able to defeat him just then, even after they had teamed up. Emoli's power had already reached a profound and overwhelming level. Pun! 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 Ju Ba and the two others were no match for him, and they were instantly sent flying after just one strike. The astonishing gulf in power between them couldn't be more evident. Fortunately, all three of them were super elites. Although they were sent flying, they hadn't been severely wounded. Ling Han stood face to face with Tan-Mo. Last chance, Tan-Mo said calmly. Even though he had defeated 3 big shots at the Eternal River tier with just a single strike, there was no sign of smugness on his face. After all, he viewed this as an extremely normal outcome. Thus, there was naturally no need for him to become smug. Hand the divine fruit and demonic tool over. Ling Han glanced at him before saying, Don't mess with me if you don't want to die. Tan-Mo faltered for a moment before bursting into laughter. Do you think you're more powerful than me simply because you managed to obtain the divine fruit and I didn't? What an absolute joke! You're only at the medium extreme, while I've already reached the pinnacle level. Moreover, I've formed over 2 million heavenly bodies. This is an overwhelming advantage. You really want to seek death? Ling Han asked. He also gave his final warning. Just this question alone is enough reason for me to kill you, Tan-Mo said coldly. He raised his hand and slowly pressed it down at Ling Han. He was purposefully moving slowly so that Ling Han could feel the terror of death bearing down upon him. Could Ling Han flee? No, that would be impossible. With Tan-Mo's formidable power, how could Ling Han flee from his grasp? Not good! That person is about to get obliterated! The onlookers all whispered among themselves, yet none of them stepped forward to help. This was because they were no match for Tan-Mo. Even if they all teamed up to target him, they would still be defeated in one simple strike. The gulf in power between them was far too great. There was no sign of delight on Wu Ju's face either. He had indeed wanted to defeat Ling Han, but definitely not in this kind of manner. However, Ling Han was completely unfazed as he retrieved his divine demon sword. Tan-Mo was astonished. This was yet another demonic tool. He knew that Ling Han possessed one demonic tool, but a second one? His eyes were red with greed. The Tan clan didn't possess many demonic tools, and thus even prodigies like him would only have the right to obtain one after becoming a demon master. Resources were scarce, while prodigies were many. Thus, there was no way around this. However, this ant actually possessed 2 demonic tools. And these were extremely powerful demonic tools, no less. This caused immense jealousy to rise from his heart. What right did Ling Han have to possess these demonic tools? However, this jealousy quickly transformed into a cold sneer on his face. This didn't matter. After all, as long as he killed Ling Han, both of these demonic tools would become his. As it turned out, he still needed to thank this ant. He was actually presenting him with 2 massive presents. Oh no, make that 3. His palm involuntarily pressed down quicker. In the presence of 2 demonic tools, even he couldn't maintain his composure any longer. You asked for this yourself, Ling Han murmured. He started to activate his divine demon sword. 1. Numerous symbols lit up, causing the celestial tool to release a boundless radiance. What? Tan-Mo's expression changed drastically. This was because he could sense the formidable might of a Genesis tier saint. How is this possible? There was an insurmountable gulf between Eternal River tier elites and Genesis tier saints. Even someone as powerful as him whose power could surpass that of numerous demon masters who had just reached the Genesis tier won't be able to defeat Genesis tier saints in a true fight. This was due to the suppression of the Tao of heaven and earth. He would be no match for saints unless he formed more heavenly bodies and experienced a qualitative change. Thus, even he couldn't activate a demonic tool and unleash their full might. So, why had this ant been able to do so? However, there was no time for Tan-Mo to wallow in his astonishment. He hurriedly turned around to flee. Battling against a Genesis tier power? He still didn't have the right to do so. Pooh! The onlookers choked in shock upon witnessing this sudden turn of events. The 4 individuals from the Tan clan more so wore expressions of ghastly astonishment. That was Tan-Mo, a prodigy who ranked highly even among all of the prodigies of the Forbidden Lands. Yet, he was actually cowering before the might of Ling Han. "That's a demon's sword!" someone exclaimed in a shaky voice. They bit their tongue in shock, but still continued. "That's a fully activated demon's sword!" No wonder Tan-Mo had turned around to flee. A fully activated demon's sword was equivalent to a demon master. This wasn't something that Tan-Mo could oppose. Holy fuck! Ling Han gritted his teeth in exertion. The divine demon sword had drained him of all of his origin power and energy. The vein patterns on the sword were all illuminated, and they were circulating with a powerful aura that felt as if it could suppress past and present. Whoosh! The divine demon sword was astonishingly quick as it automatically sliced through the air and slashed at Tan-Mo. Demon masters could cover tens of millions of miles with a single stride, and the divine demon sword was no exception. Thus, how could Tan-Mo escape from its attack? Upon seeing the sword slash over, Tan-Mo had no option but to turn around and block it with his full strength. If he turned around to block, he would still have a sliver of chance at survival. However, if he continued to flee, his only fate would be death. He roared loudly as the heavenly bodies behind him all unleashed a boundless might. He then launched a punch to meet the attack of the divine demon's sword. 1. The divine demon's sword faltered slightly. He's blocked it. The onlookers were absolutely stunned. Was Tan-Mo about to defy the heavens? He had actually blocked the attack of a demonic tool. Meanwhile, Tan-Mo was both astonished and delighted. In fact, even he could barely believe that he was this powerful. However, his expression changed the very next instant. This was because the divine demon's sword had started to move again, inching closer and closer to his throat. The sword was toying around with him. What kind of precious tool was this? Not only had it developed a spirit, but it had developed an extremely despicable spirit. It was actually toying around with its prey. Ling Han was rendered speechless. The divine demon sword had been nurtured and raised by him, so it had definitely taken after his personality. Was he this wicked? There was a slight feeling of guilt in Ling Han's mind. The divine demon sword inched closer and closer as cold sweat started to pour from Tan-Mo's forehead. He could clearly feel the sensation of death bearing down upon him. This was a petrifying sensation. This had nothing to do with whether he was a prodigy or not. Everyone was scared of death, even Ling Han. It was just that there were situations where he would rather battle to the death than flee. No! Tan-Mo roared. He was a prodigy of the Tan clan, and his future lay in the celestial realm, so how could he die here? Moreover, how could he die at the hands of a mere ant? He unleashed his full strength, and even started to combust his life force. If he didn't make a sacrifice now, there would be no more chances in the future. However, before the fully activated divine demon sword, he didn't stand an iota of chance even though the divine demon sword was only at level 17 right now. Pooh! The divine demon sword slowly stabbed down, unstoppable as it pierced into Tan-Mo's chest. Murderous aura surged outward, slowly obliterating his life force. There was bitterness on Tan-Mo's face as he looked at the divine demon sword in his chest. He reached over as if to grab something, yet his hands immediately fell to his sides, limp and powerless. Tan-Mo, a supreme prodigy, was killed just like that. Chapter 1565 Swallowing an Insul. Chapter 1565 Swallowing an Insul. Everyone was stunned by this sight. In fact, this outcome had already been a foregone conclusion once the divine demon's sword had unleashed its full might. However, just how rare were eternal river tirelites who had formed over 2 million heavenly bodies? Truth be told, they were even harder to find than demon masters. Yet Tan-Mo had been killed not long after his appearance. The onlookers were truly finding it hard to digest this outcome. No! The 4 members of the Tan clan exclaimed in astonishment. Tan-Mo had been the most outstanding prodigy among the younger generation of the Tan clan, and the clan had held extremely high hopes for him. Yet, he had actually been killed by a mere ant in this mystery realm. "You've brought a huge disaster upon yourself," a member of the Tan clan roared as he pointed at Ling Han. "Commit suicide to repent for your crime." Ling Han scratched his head. Although the divine demon's sword had drained him of all his stamina, unlike origin power, it would recover extremely quickly. At the very least, he could stand up straight without collapsing to the ground. In any case, was there something wrong with these people's brains? If he had been afraid of the Tan clan, would he have killed Tan-Mo in the first place? "If you people continue to spew nonsense, I'll make sure to kill you too." There was killing intent in his eyes as he glared at the members of the Tan clan. He wasn't a bloodthirsty person, so he wouldn't kill these 4 people merely because they had provoked him. However, if they continued to push his limits, they would eventually breach his bottom line. The members of the Tan clan immediately shut up upon hearing this. They were far weaker than Tan-Mo, so how could they dare to oppose Ling Han? "Activate the decree to kill that villainous brat," they whispered among themselves. "But the sea is far too turbulent. Without the protection of the decree, we might not make it out of here alive. Then we won't oppose that villainous brat for the time being. In any case, the 6th elder definitely won't forgive him when he learns of this. Moreover, Brother Mo also said so just then. The 6th elder has notified the clan, so they'll definitely send more powerful elders over. At that time..." Humph! They chose to swallow this insult and back down for the time being. Ju Ba and the others were all invigorated with excitement upon seeing this. Tan-Mo had suppressed all of them just then, so they had only been able to watch on helplessly as these people acted with haughtiness and arrogance. However, now that Tan-Mo had been killed, these 4 people instantly backed down in cowardice. What a sweet feeling this was. Anyhow, they were also unable to understand how Ling Han had managed to fully activate the demonic tool. However, they didn't mull over this for too long. After all, Ling Han was on their side now. This brought pride to their side, and it was truly a delightful feeling. There was killing intent in Mo Li's eyes as she swept his gaze over the 4 members of the Tan clan. However, she eventually held himself back from attacking. One needed to remove the roots when cutting weed, but these 4 people still possessed the protection of a decree. Just then, Tan-Mo hadn't had the chance to flee back into the range of the decree. However, these 4 people certainly wouldn't leave its range now. With the decree of a demon master protecting them, how could Mo Li hope to kill them? However, once a decree was activated, it would only be effective for a limited amount of time. Yet they all had to stay in this place for 3 years. Mo Li and the others refused to believe that this decree could be effective for this long. Thus, this was merely a matter of killing them sooner or later. As long as these 4 people were disposed of, they could easily make up an excuse and say that they, along with Tan-Mo, had been killed by the sea. After all, wasn't this a common and understandable occurrence? They had charged in without any understanding of the situation, so whom could they blame for their deaths? In fact, Ling Han had also considered killing them to destroy the evidence. However, he wasn't resolute enough to kill people for no good reason. More importantly, would someone with the temper of Tan Feng believe his explanation? He would definitely become wild with rage upon learning of the deaths, and it was very likely that he would indiscriminately capture people to search their souls. Thus, Ling Han still wouldn't be able to hide the truth. That being the case, he might as well be frank and forthright. He would fearlessly admit to being the killer. If he managed to obtain the Chaos Source Rock, he would receive 1 power boost opportunity after the small tower refined it. At that time, he would possess the ability to kill anyone under the level of Celestial King. That being the case, what trouble could a mere yellow demon bring? Of course, he wouldn't waste this opportunity if he didn't need to. After all, he wanted to save this power boost opportunity for the 8 stones forbidden land. Small tower, can you give me a few more power boost opportunities? Ling Han asked. You can just give me slightly less power each time. For example, I'm happy with power at the Severing mundane tier. Regardless of whether he was in the immortal realm or netherworld, power at the Severing mundane tier was already enough to crush all Genesis tier saints. No problem, I can give you 3 opportunities with power at the consummate level of the Genesis tier. Small Tower quickly replied. However, the condition is that you're able to obtain the Chaos Source Rock from me. 3 times? And only at the consummate level of the Genesis tier? Ling Han asked. He started to haggle with the Small Tower, saying, This isn't right. Are you telling me that the power of a celestial king is only equivalent to that of 3 Genesis tier saints? The power boosts aren't calculated like that. Take it or leave it. Small Tower said proudly. Ling Han sighed and said, Fine, I'll take the 3 opportunities. Before entering the celestial realm, having the opportunity to wield power at the Genesis tier 3 times was most likely more advantageous than having the opportunity to wield power at the celestial king tier once. If the need arose, he could simply find more Chaos Source Rocks to feed the vampire-like Small Tower. This would give him more power boost opportunities. Sigh, things were much better in the past. I would receive a free power boost opportunity every time I advanced to the next cultivation level. They continued to advance. Moreover, even though Ling Han had obtained a saint fruit, no one suggested that he share it. Of course they didn't. Not only did Ling Han possess demonic tools, but he even possessed the ability to fully activate them. As such, who would dare to provoke him? Ling Han swallowed some alchemical pills as he sat on the flying shuttle. He then retrieved a large number of true origin stones, and used them to form a large spiritual chi formation. This would allow him to rapidly replenish his depleted origin power. Everyone on the shuttle gazed at him with respect and fear. Just his ability to activate a demonic tool alone was enough reason for them to kneel in reverence. Qi Huangji shook his head slightly. He had initially thought that he was only slightly weaker than Ling Han. By the looks of things now, the gulf between them had already grown to a boundlessly large extent. This gulf was so large that he could only gaze up at Ling Han. Although he was unwilling to, he still accepted this reality. If he refused to even recognize this difference, then what right would he have to be called a prodigy? The small shuttle continued forward. After several hours, they met with another gigantic wave. However, they faced a huge test time as Ling Han was still recovering from his previous battle. Only Emoli could deal with this wave. When they eventually passed the wave, the small shuttle beneath them had already been smashed into pieces. It looks like we need to come up with a backup plan, Emoli said as he retrieved another flying shuttle. They had naturally come to this mystery realm very well prepared. Ziyuan, Hangjun, Diqing, Qinyu, Hanlong, Guangming, you guys take another shuttle and return first. You can search for godly medicine in the outer regions of the mystery realm. Understood. The 6 people who were mentioned all nodded in understanding. They were weaker than the others, and even the shuttles wouldn't be able to protect them anymore. Since they needed to rely on their physique to advance now, these people would merely be holding everyone back. Thus, it was better that they retreated now. After all, this sea was vast, and there were godly medicines everywhere. As such, there was no need for them to stubbornly advance. The group of 10 was divided into 2 smaller groups, one which retreated and one which continued to advance. The latter group only consisted of Ling Han, Emoli, Qi Huangji, and Wu Ju. When the next wave came, Ling Han had already recovered most of his energy. However, even though he and Moli worked together, the shuttle that they rode was still instantly smashed into pieces. At the same time, the wave continued to threaten their safety. However, Ling Han was unafraid. His physique was powerful enough to withstand this wave. Meanwhile, Emoli was also able to withstand the wave. Qi Huangji didn't fare as well as them, and he was left extremely disheveled. However, he was a rank 3 king tier, after all, so he was able to grit his teeth and withstand the wave. As for Wu Ju, he managed to scrape through the wave thanks to a necklace that he was wearing. This was also the reason why only Emoli and the 3 others continued forward. The others would be unable to withstand the power of these gigantic waves. In fact, their flesh and bones would be brutally crushed if they attempted to face these waves. In any case, it was as if Emoli had prepared countless shuttles, retrieving a new one each time the previous one was destroyed. This allowed them to spend less origin power as they advanced forward. Although it wasn't much, saving a bit was still better than saving nothing at all. After continuing forward for 3 months like this, a colossal peak that towered into the sky gradually appeared before their eyes. Chapter 1566 Deciphering Formations. Chapter 1566 Deciphering Formations. This was Ocean Dragon Mountain. Ling Han gazed up, yet he was unable to see the peak of the mountain even with a vision as powerful as his. It was as if that were truly a boundless peak that soared to the pinnacle of the sky. Upon closer inspection, he could see that this mountain bore a surprising resemblance to a raging dragon that was soaring into the sky. The 4 of them landed at the foot of the mountain. According to Emoli, they couldn't directly ascend the mountain from the air. This was because the mountain was surrounded by terrifying restrictions that would cause certain death if activated. There were 99 different paths leading to the peak of the mountain, yet each path could only be chosen by one person. Once it was chosen, no one else could walk that path. Of course, this was unless the first person died. This wasn't impossible, since these paths were also littered with restrictions. It was just that there were fewer restrictions on the paths than surrounding the mountain. In any case, it wasn't necessary for them to forcefully ascend the mountain if they couldn't decipher the restrictions. After all, they would be kicked out of this mystery realm once the time limit of 3 years was up. They didn't need to worry about being trapped here forever. Emoli reiterated that they didn't need to push their limits, and that they should give up if they couldn't advance any further. There was no need for them to risk their lives. Only after reinforcing this point did they each choose a path and begin to ascend the mountain. In fact, there were many rare opportunities while ascending the mountain as well, with treasures such as cultivation techniques, pill recipes, and precious tools appearing from time to time. Although there were relatively few people who could successfully cross the sea, the total number after all these years was definitely still very high. Moreover, each of these people would have attempted to ascend the mountain. Thus, all of the lower-level treasures near the foot of the mountain had already been taken. If they wanted to obtain some treasures, they would need to reach a higher point on the mountain. It was clear that this would become harder and harder by the generation. The 4 of them split up, and each ascended a path of their own. Ling Han had also chosen a path. In fact, there was no notion of difficulty for these paths, with each being pretty much the same. After climbing for a while, several rocks appeared before Ling Han. Their appearance was extremely sudden, and it was as if someone had purposefully tossed them onto the path as an obstruction. Ling Han stopped to carefully examine these rocks. These were no ordinary rocks, with all of them having formation patterns carved into them. Each rock was linked to another, and they formed a small-scale formation together. Interesting. Ling Han had never seen this kind of formation before, and thus he didn't barge through it with brute force. Instead, he started to deduce a method to decipher this formation. Although this formation is simple, it's able to teach me some foundational concepts. These are things that I overlooked while cultivating in the 8th campus. In the past, I was only focused on studying high-level formations, yet I neglected to learn about these simple yet foundational concepts. The path to becoming a saint is difficult, so if I want to master saint-level formations, I must ensure that my foundations are extremely strong. Ling Han nodded to himself as he continued to climb the mountain. After ascending a mile or so, he saw another formation appear before him. This formation was also very easy to decipher, and he could have actually used brute force to barge through it. However, Ling Han didn't choose to do this. Instead, he only continued to advance after fully comprehending the formation. He continued to do this for all of the formations that he encountered on his ascent. Since most of these formations could be defeated with brute strength, they naturally hadn't managed to trap many of the people who had taken this path before Ling Han. Thus, Ling Han still hadn't obtained a single treasure yet. It was clear that the treasures had already been obtained by those before Ling Han. However, Ling Han wasn't discouraged by this. After all, no one had reached the peak of the mountain before. In fact, no one had ever witnessed the peak of the mountain before either. Thus, as long as he was quick enough, he would eventually reach a height that no one had ever reached before. At that time, any treasure that he encountered would naturally become his. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Time trickled, and Ling Han had already deciphered over 3,000 formations in just a short 10 days. These had all been extremely simple formations. This continued all the way until the 300th day, by which time Ling Han had already deciphered hundreds of thousands of formations. After this, however, the formations that he encountered suddenly became more difficult. He had to pause to think for a moment before he could decipher them. However, this still wasn't enough to stop his advance. Judging from the lack of treasures along the way, Ling Han guessed that these formations hadn't been able to obstruct the large majority of cultivators who had walked this path, either. Another 200 days passed, and the difficulty of the formations increased again. By this stage, the formations would already be relatively difficult to overcome with brute strength. Only those who possessed a physique as freakish as Ling Han's or those who possessed the power of big shots had the right to defeat these formations through brute strength. Ling Han started to use the Black Tower. More precisely, he started to use the reincarnation tree that was planted inside the Black Tower. He analyzed the formation patterns under the reincarnation tree, and this allowed him to greatly reduce the time that he spent. His pace was almost unaffected, and he continued to ascend the mountain at an astonishing speed. However, the formations also continued to become more and more difficult. This meant that Ling Han needed to spend longer and longer thinking and analyzing in the Black Tower. Of the 3 years time limit, there was still 1 year remaining. Anyhow, after deciphering a formation, Ling Han coincidentally found a jade plaque on the ground. He picked it up and tossed it into the Black Tower before analyzing it. This wasn't some trap, but rather a recording of a secret technique called Flying Dragon Shadow Hands. This wasn't a high-level technique, but Ling Han instantly knew that it was an extraordinary technique after taking a quick glance. He nodded to himself. Although those who ascended this mountain later would reap fewer treasures, the quality of the treasures that they obtained would definitely be much higher simply because of the height at which they were located as well as the difficulty associated with obtaining them. A good analogy would be the others obtaining 1,000 divine fruits while Ling Han only obtained 1 saint fruit. Even though it was much less in number, it was definitely much higher in value. He smiled happily as he continued forward. The formations became more and more difficult to decipher. If Ling Han deciphered them conventionally, he would need to spend at least a few months on each formation. However, with the help of the reincarnation tree, these formations didn't pose a problem at all. The speed of his advance was astonishing, and he also started to obtain more and more treasures. In fact, he would discover something on the ground each time he deciphered a formation. Most of these discoveries were jade boxes that held alchemical pills or divine fruits, though none of them had reached the saint level. This left Ling Han slightly disappointed. Quickly calculating the time, he realized that they were already very close to reaching the 3-year time limit. There were only 7 months remaining. I wonder if I can reach the peak, Ling Han thought to himself. If I can't reach it, then I won't be able to obtain the Chaos Source Rock. In other words, I won't be able to receive the power boost from the Black Tower. I'll try my best. Ling Han hadn't had a wink of sleep in these past 2 years. However, as an Eternal Riveter elite, he naturally didn't need to sleep anyway. This wouldn't cause any detrimental effects. Decipher, decipher, decipher. 3 months before the time limit, the peak of the mountain finally appeared before Ling Han's eyes. There was a temple there, and on its roof rested the stone statue of a true dragon. Ling Han could already see this quite clearly from where he was. Although that was only the stone statue of a true dragon, it still exerted a powerful pressure on him. It was as if it could come alive at any moment and soar into the skies, causing all the beings of the world to kneel before it. There were still 3 months, and this was probably just enough time. He continued to decipher the formations and advance. At this moment, he realized just how wise his decision not to bulldoze through the low-level formations had been. This was because he needed to use the foundational knowledge that he had mastered thanks to them to decipher these high-level formations. If he had bulldozed his way through, he definitely would have been at a complete loss now. His only option would be to randomly try his luck. Oh. Ah. Ling Han continued to exclaim in astonishment. Foundational knowledge was only foundational knowledge, after all. Now, however, these high-level formations were giving him insights into how he could combine these foundational elements into more complicated structures. All of the complicated matters in the world could be broken down into more foundational elements. Similarly, as long as one had mastered all of the foundational elements, they could use them to construct more high-level and complicated structures. For example, Saint-level formations. Chapter 1567 Corpse of a Celestial. Chapter 1567 Corpse of a Celestial. Ling Han was struck by a sudden realization. These paths didn't actually exist as a trial for cultivators. Instead, they were here as a means to teach cultivators about formations, from the most foundational stages to more complex stages. The foot of the mountain allowed cultivators to grasp the foundations of formations. Afterward, the formations would slowly increase in difficulty, and teach cultivators how to combine these foundational elements into more complicated and high-level structures. Following this increase in complexity, the formations would naturally become more powerful as well. A smile appeared on Ling Han's face. Even if he eventually failed to obtain the Chaos Source Rock, this trip would still be worth it. He had already developed a little understanding of saint-level formations. This isn't the right attitude. You definitely have to find that Chaos Source Rock. Small Tower exclaimed in discontent. I know, I'll definitely try my best, Ling Han replied with a sigh. What a hard tower to satisfy. However, even if there were just a sliver of chance, Ling Han would still try his best. After all, he would be the biggest beneficiary if the Black Tower managed to recover. Moreover, he would also receive 1 or 3 power boost opportunities, depending on the amount of power he desired. There were only a few kilometers remaining until he reached the peak of the mountain. Based on Ling Han's previous experience, there would only be a dozen or so formations left for him to decipher. However, following their explosive increase in difficulty, he would also need more and more time to decipher them. By the time he reached the last 3 formations, there were only 10 days remaining until the time limit of 3 years was reached. This evidently wasn't enough time. Right now, the time he needed to decipher a single formation had already increased to over 10 days. Thus, there was only enough time for him to decipher one of the formations. Ling Han shook his head in resignation. He had already tried his best, and he truly couldn't think of any other way. Don't give up, Small Tower said. As if reaching some resolution, it said, at the risk of wasting some power, I'm willing to provide you with some help. Ling Han's expression involuntarily darkened. This damned Small Tower had been hiding its power from him this entire time. If it weren't for something that affected it, perhaps it would have never revealed its true power to him. I can increase the effects of the reincarnation tree 10-fold, but this will cause me to fall into a slumber for the next few days. During this time, you won't be able to enter or exit the Black Tower, Small Tower said solemnly. Ling Han was astonished upon hearing this. By the looks of it, Small Tower wasn't actually hiding its power from him. Rather, the price of it taking action was truly quite large. Ling Han's biggest trump card was the Black Tower. If he wasn't able to use it for a few days, what would he do if he came across a saint or a demon master? He would only be able to withstand a few strikes at most. However, Small Tower had already reached a resolution, so how could he not have? Deal, Ling Han said with a nod. He was also extremely curious about the peak of Ocean Dragon Mountain. After memorizing the formations, he entered the Black Tower and started to analyze them under the reincarnation tree. Right now, both the Empress and the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had given up their positions for him. Thus, the entire power of the reincarnation tree was focused solely on his body. 2 days passed, and Ling Han finished deciphering the first formation. Another 2 days passed, and he finished deciphering the second formation. Then another 3 days passed, and he finally finished deciphering the third and last formation. A total of 7 days had passed. Phew! Ling Han breathed a sigh of relief. An indescribably magnificent temple appeared before him. It towered 3 kilometers into the air, and it more so stretched dozens of kilometers into the distance. This temple was held up by innumerable columns, each of which also reached 3 kilometers in height. Before such colossal columns, Ling Han appeared incredibly tiny and insignificant. "Brat, don't forget the chaos source," Small Tower said with much exertion. However, it was still unable to complete its sentence before falling into silence. "Small Tower! Small Tower!" Ling Han shouted. However, he received no reply. In fact, he couldn't even sense the existence of the Black Tower anymore. If he had known this, he would have brought the Empress and the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden out first. However, who knew when Small Tower would awake from its slumber? 3 days would pass by in a flash, so how much commotion would he cause if he suddenly returned from this mystery realm with the Empress and the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden by his side? The others would all wonder about his spatial god tool. Why had he been able to bring it into the mystery realm? Moreover, he had killed Tan Mo, so Tan Phone would definitely target him once he appeared. If the Empress and the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden were by his side, he would simply be putting them in grave and unnecessary danger. Let it be, then. Ling Han took a deep breath before stepping forward. He had already become accustomed to the Black Tower's existence, and thus he was always unafraid even when faced with severe dangers. This was because he possessed an incredibly powerful trump card. Now, however, he couldn't use this trump card anymore. He could only rely on himself. Fortunately, this Ocean Dragon Mountain didn't look like a deadly place. Quite the contrary, in fact, judging by the educational formations along the way. If he managed to reach the saint level in formations in the future, this place would definitely be a huge contributing factor. There were no gates to the temple, so Ling Han was able to waltz right in. Upon entering the temple, the first thing he did was naturally search for the Chaos Source Rock. He had promised Small Tower that he would do his best to obtain it. He searched for the Chaos Source Rock everywhere. However, this temple was extremely spacious and also colossal in size. After searching for a moment, Ling Han suddenly stopped in his tracks. 10 corpses had appeared before him. Of these corpses, 8 were men and 2 were women. All of them appeared to be extremely old. They had all battled to death, and Ling Han could clearly see the sword wounds on their bodies. However, even though they had been killed heavens knew how many years ago, Ling Han still didn't have the right to even approach them. There were peculiar projections of the universe and heavenly bodies surrounding these corpses, and these projections took the form of numerous floating bubbles. Looking closely, he could see that each bubble contained a world that was continually transforming and undergoing the cycles of life and death, creation and destruction. Are these genuine worlds, or are they mere illusions? Ling Han's pupils contracted slightly. These 10 people were far more powerful than any being that he had ever seen before. Perhaps he only knew of one person who could rival them. The heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire. Meanwhile, the 3 Phoenix Kings weren't even on the same level as them. These were elites from the celestial realm. It was just that they had been far too powerful when alive, so much so that Ling Han couldn't even fathom their power. Thus, he was unable to determine whether these 10 people had been more powerful when alive, or if the heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire had been more powerful. Perhaps these are also victims of the great turmoil? What happened in the celestial realm back then? Why were so many elites killed? Anyhow, it made sense that Chaos Source Rocks would appear here now. In fact, it was even possible that this entire mystery realm had fallen down from the celestial realm. These are the corpses of celestials. There's probably still some blood essence and celestial fluid inside their bodies. It's a pity, that they're all humans, so I can't bring myself to retrieve them. Moreover, they're far too powerful anyway. Not to mention that I can't use the Black Tower right now. Even if I could, I'd still be seeking death if I attempted to approach them with my divine sense. So be it. I'll look for the Chaos Source Rock first. Ling Han pondered for a moment before deciding to honor his promise with Small Tower first. Young man! An old voice suddenly reverberated throughout the temple. Ling Han's skin instantly crawled with goosebumps, and he more so felt somewhat stifled. The ancient sites that others entered were all ordinary ancient sites. They would clear challenges and obtain treasures, with the process being as normal as could be. However, almost none of the ancient sites that he had entered were ordinary ancient sites. They would always be subject to peculiar events such as what he was experiencing now. However, this was also part of his abilities, no? After all, who else had managed to reach the peak of this mountain and enter this temple before? Since no one had entered this temple before, it was only natural that no one had heard this voice before either. What the hell is this? Are you dead or alive? Ling Han asked. Although this question was strange, its importance was in fact very great. The old voice sounded again, saying, Rest assured, I've already been dead for heavens know how many years. It's just that I left a wisp of my divine sense inside a Chaos Source Rock before I died, allowing me to exist until now. Chaos Source Rock. Chapter 1568 History of the Cheng Clan. 1568 History of the Cheng Clan. So what unfulfilled wish does Senior have? Ling Han asked. It was clear that he had died with frustration and resentment. If he hadn't left a wisp of his divine sense inside a Chaos Source Rock, perhaps he might have even risen up and become a zombie. I have many unfulfilled wishes, the old voice replied. Yes, so hurry up and tell me. I can only stay here for 3 days, and I still need to obtain the Chaos Source Rock, Ling Han said in his mind. However, Ling Han didn't press him to continue. The Hysteria Demon Master and the others had stated that there might exist a black demon-level power inside the Ocean Dragon Mountain. It was evident that their suspicion was intimately linked with this dead yet still existent elite. Thus, it was best not to offend this being. After all, he couldn't use his biggest trump card, the Black Tower, for the time being. Please do tell, Senior. If this junior is able to, I'll definitely help you fulfill your wishes, Ling Han said. Ha ha! The old voice chuckled before saying, Young man, do you truly possess this conviction? Ling Han nodded and replied, I never make empty promises. The old voice faltered for a moment before saying, My name is Cheng Fu, and my Cheng clan is from the Celestial Realm. Oh, that's right, you probably don't know about the existence of the Celestial Realm. I'm aware of it, Ling Han hurriedly interjected. He didn't need to hear about the Celestial Realm again. Cheng Fu was slightly astonished. A young brat from the netherworld actually knew about the existence of the Celestial Realm? However, he quickly regained his composure and said, Since you know about the Celestial Realm, that makes things a little easier. The Cheng clan also used to be a powerful force of the Celestial Realm. However, a great commotion erupted, and this affected my Cheng clan. We were massacred by a supreme elite, and if it wasn't for the preparations that our ancestors made, and if it wasn't for the formation automatically activating and pushing our ancestral grounds out of the Celestial Realm, perhaps I wouldn't be here speaking to you today. Cheng Fu sighed before continuing. If it's possible, I want you to kill that supreme elite for me. Ling Han's expression involuntarily darkened. Old man, you're truly not holding back. This is someone that even you're referring to as a supreme elite. In other words, they're definitely an elite of the elites in the Celestial Realm. He paused for a moment before saying, Dare I ask, Senior, who is this supreme elite that you speak of? Also, what's their cultivation level? He's the Imperial Void Celestial King. Cheng Fu replied. Pooh! Ling Han instantly choked on his own spit. Celestial King! There were few times when Small Tower would cower, but even it conceded that it couldn't defeat Celestial Kings. From this, it could be seen just how powerful Celestial Kings were. In fact, Ling Han suspected that the Black Tower was a precious treasure of a celestial king who had most likely died during the Great Commotion. The Black Tower had also suffered severe damage, and for some unknown reason, it had managed to enter the lower realm, and had eventually ended up in his possession. Moreover, this celestial king was definitely more powerful than most, since the indestructible Heaven's Scroll required one to comprehend the celestial techniques of numerous celestial kings if they wanted to reach a stage of great accomplishment. In any case, celestial kings were definitely supremely powerful beings. They were the big shots of the celestial realm. Kill a celestial king? Heh. Ling Han chuckled bitterly and asked, "Does Senior believe that I can achieve this?" "No," Cheng Fu replied firmly and resolutely. "However, if you can find the place where my ancestor is recovering, perhaps you'll have a sliver of chance to succeed." Ling Han was astonished. "Could it be that your ancestor is also a celestial king?" "Naturally," Cheng Fu replied. His voice suddenly became proud and haughty, and he said, "Not only is my ancestor a celestial king, but he's even an elite among the celestial kings. However, my ancestor became involved in some kind of great matter back then, and he ended up being surrounded and attacked by several other celestial kings. In the end, he managed to escape to some unknown place after suffering heavy wounds. As for the Qing clan," sigh. It was clear that the celestial king of the Qing clan had fled. However, he could flee, but the Qing clan couldn't hide. As such, the ancestral grounds of the Qing clan had been massacred by a celestial king. Although there were preparations made by their ancestor, which sent their ancestral grounds out of the celestial realm, there were still no survivors. Moreover, if a celestial king were regarded as severely wounded, then they had to have suffered some astonishing Dao wound. Add to that the immortal's calamity that they needed to face every 100 million years, and it was imaginable that their wounds would only become increasingly severe. If this were the case, even celestial kings wouldn't be able to escape from death. Now that so many years had passed, it was more likely than not that the celestial king of the Qing clan had already passed away. Thus, looking for that old celestial king and asking him to exact revenge? This seemed even more implausible than him defeating the celestial king. However, Cheng Fu was brimming with confidence, and he said, "Our ancestor practices a profound cultivation technique, so he's definitely still alive. Young man, when you enter the celestial realm in the future, look for our ancestor according to the method that I'm about to teach you. That way, the Qing clan will be able to exact revenge. Moreover, if you receive some guidance from our ancestor, it shouldn't be difficult for you to advance to the Immortal Palace tier or Ascending Origin tier." Ling Han wouldn't foolishly believe these spoken promises, and he asked, "Senior, are the Immortal Palace tier and Ascending Origin tier the major tiers after the Severing Mundane tier?" "Huh. Since you know about the Celestial Realm, why aren't you aware of the cultivation levels in the Celestial Realm?" Cheng Fu found this especially strange, but he still replied, "The tier after the Severing Mundane tier is the Dividing Soul tier. After that is the Immortal Palace tier, and then the Ascending Origin tier. Beyond the Ascending Origin tier is the tier that every single Celestial dreams of reaching, the Celestial King tier. The Celestial King tier is divided into 9 levels, with each level bringing one closer to ascending the heavens. Our ancestor is a supreme Celestial King of the 8th heaven. In other words, he's only one step away from reaching the pinnacle of the Celestial King tier." Only now did Ling Han finally learn of the cultivation levels of the Celestial Realm, and sure enough, Celestial Kings were extraordinary beings who stood at the pinnacle of the Celestial Tao. However, Celestial Kings weren't ranked based on the notion of low extreme or high extreme, but rather were ranked according to 9 different levels. Ling Han pondered for a moment before saying, "If an opportunity arises, I'll definitely find your ancestor." In his view, the Celestial King of the Qing clan either was hiding and biding his time because of his severe wounds, or he had already died from his wounds. Otherwise, he would have already learned about the fate of the Qing clan long ago. If that were the case, would it be necessary for Ling Han to seek him out? "Senior, what on earth happened during the Great Turmoil?" he asked. It was extremely rare to come across someone who had experienced this event, and he was truly very curious about it. This was an event that had caused numerous celestial kings to die, so it was definitely over a matter that pertained to some very foundational principle. I don't know either, Cheng Fu replied with a sigh. I'm only a mere severing mundane tier cultivator, and I was coincidentally near the Chaos Source Rock when the massacre began. It was because of this that I was able to leave a wisp of my divine sense. Among celestial king forces, those at the severing mundane tier were the weakest. Thus, it was only natural that Cheng Fu didn't know about the core secrets behind the great turmoil. However, what Ling Han found strange was the fact that only very few people knew about the reasons behind the great turmoil, even though it had engulfed the entire celestial realm. Logically speaking, more people should have known about the reason behind such a massive event. In any case, the Rock Palace was also a powerful force, and that old woman was most likely a celestial king as well. Thus, she would definitely be aware of the intricacies. When he saw Hu Niu in the future, he could get her to ask for him. Young man, I won't make you work for nothing, Cheng Fu said. Not only will I give you a Chaos Source Rock, but I'll even teach you several formations. If you can comprehend them, you'll possess the ability to defeat many severing mundane tier cultivators in the celestial realm. Follow my guidance, and make sure you don't take a wrong step. This is the ancestral ground of the Qing clan, and there's a powerful formation protecting it. No one can breach this formation unless they're a celestial king. Ling Han nodded in understanding as he followed the guidance of the voice. At the same time, he looked around to observe his surroundings. This is a place where a celestial king lived before. TSK, I wonder how many treasures remain here. However, it was a shame that Cheng Fu still held on to the hope that their ancestor hadn't died yet. He was hopeful that the Qing clan could recapture the brilliance of its past. Thus, it was clear that he wouldn't give this ancestral ground to Ling Han. Chapter 1569 Rising Commotion. Chapter 1569 Rising Commotion. Ling Han had already reaped fairly rich rewards. When crossing the sea, he had obtained many godly medicines, and had even obtained a saint fruit. When ascending the mountain, he had also obtained many divine pills and secret techniques. As long as he could obtain the Chaos Source Rock now, this trip could be viewed as perfect. Following Cheng Fu's guidance, he continued to weave through the colossal pillars of the temple. Along the way, he witnessed many strange and peculiar scenes. This temple wasn't a simple structure. Instead, it was composed of many small worlds, with each room in the temple potentially being boundless in size. If he took one wrong step, it was possible that he would become lost in a small world. At that time, he would need heavens knew how long to find his way back out. No wonder Cheng Fu dared to claim that no one under the level of Celestial King could breach this formation. However, so what if one was a Celestial King? Take the Celestial King of the Qing clan, for example. Wasn't he surrounded and attacked, resulting in the destruction of the Cheng clan? Their ancestral ground was massacred, and even though it had managed to flee from the celestial realm, almost all of the clan members had been killed. After walking for several hours, Ling Han finally arrived before a stone room. He then opened the door using the method that Cheng Fu taught him before stepping in. He immediately arrived above a galaxy, in the center of which there hovered a gigantic rock that was radiating with an indescribable glow. This was the Chaos Source Rock. Ling Han determined this with a single glance. During his time in the lower realm, he had also obtained a Chaos Source Rock once. However, it was Hu Niu who had helped him absorb it into the Black Tower. He didn't know whether he could replicate this now. The Chaos Source Rock is a precious treasure, even in the celestial realm, Cheng Fu said with emotion. When charged with source power, it can help raise the level of one's physique. The Qing clan relied on this Chaos Source Rock to nurture countless prodigies. However, it's a shame that those under the level of Celestial King were nothing but cannon fodder during the Great Turmoil. Young man, my task here is done. Take this Chaos Source Rock and leave. I'll seal this ancestral ground afterward, and only our ancestor will be able to find it. 1. The Chaos Source Rock started to hover toward Ling Han. Ling Han hurriedly absorbed it into his spatial ring. To his surprise, it actually worked. By the looks of it, he could suppress the ability of the Chaos Source Rock after advancing to the immortal level. He hadn't been able to do this the previous time. That was most likely because he had still been too weak, meaning that he hadn't had the ability to use the Chaos Source Rock. Boom! The world he was in suddenly started to crumble. Before he knew it, Ling Han had already reappeared on a barren and desolate planet. In the distance, there were a dozen or so demon masters standing with their hands clasped behind their backs. The time limit was a mere 3 years, and to demon masters, this was as quick as the blink of an eye. Thus, there had been no need for them to return. They remained here to discuss Dao, and 3 years flew by just like that. Not only Ling Han, but the others had also been kicked out of the mystery realm. From today onward, the Ocean Dragon Mountain would disappear forever. Ling Han couldn't help but sigh with emotion. It seemed like every mystery realm that he entered would reach the end of its lifespan was much like a star of misfortune. Tan Feng's expression involuntarily darkened as he swept his gaze across the cultivators. Where's Tan Mo? Sixth Elder, Brother Mo was killed. The 4 members of the Tan clan hurriedly exclaimed. They finally had someone powerful to rely on now. What? Tan Feng exclaimed in shock. How was this possible? Who killed him? He hurriedly asked. Was it the black demon power in the mystery realm? It was him, the 4 members of the Tan clan replied as they pointed at Ling Han. Shua! Everyone turned around to look at Ling Han, including the 18 demon masters. However, the 18 demon masters all shook their heads, a doubtful expression on their faces. How could this be possible? Tan Mo was at the pinnacle level of the Eternal River tier, and his power was more so at another level compared to Mo Li and the other big shots. Who under the level of Genesis tier could kill him? Ling Han? Even the Hysteria Demon Master who knew about his freakish talent wasn't convinced that he possessed the ability to kill Tan Mo. After all, this was analogous to claiming that a sheep had defeated and killed a lion. It couldn't be possible no matter how he thought about it. It was genuinely him, the 4 members of the Tan clan exclaimed when they saw the cold gaze of Tan Feng sweep over. They hurriedly explained what had happened, also revealing that Ling Han possessed a demonic tool and was surprisingly able to fully activate it. The demon masters were astonished by what they heard. An Eternal River tier elite had managed to fully activate a demonic tool? Preposterous! They started to verify these claims with their disciples and descendants, and after hearing their answers, their expressions of astonishment grew even deeper. This young man was extremely strange. Meanwhile, Tan Feng was seething with killing intent as he locked his gaze onto Ling Han. This person had actually dared to kill a member of the Tan clan, the most prodigious Tan Mo, no less. He was the hope of the Tan clan, and he was a prodigy who they believed could continue to shine even after entering the celestial realm. Die! Tan Feng roared. He didn't hesitate before attacking Ling Han. Taking revenge for Tan Mo was only one part of his motive. Apart from that, he was also attracted by the 2 demonic tools and 1 saint fruit that Ling Han possessed. Thus, he didn't hesitate before attacking. Humph! The Hysteria Demon Master was prepared for this, and he immediately launched his palm in reply. It transformed into a streak of black light as it shot toward Tan Feng. Tan Feng had no option but to turn around and block. He was confident that he was more powerful than the Hysteria Demon Master, but he still wasn't arrogant enough to face his attack without putting up any defenses. Glancing back, he saw that Ling Han had already seized this opportunity to hide behind the Hysteria Demon Master. Are you seeking death? He asked balefully. The Hysteria Demon Master was a mere yellow demon, and he was nothing in the eyes of the Tan clan. Several of their elders could suppress him with ease. The Hysteria Demon Master flicked his sleeves and said, When one enters a mystery realm, they take responsibility for their own life and death. Moreover, Ling Han killed Tan Mo as the weaker of the 2, so one can only say that Tan Mo lost because his skills were inferior. If you continue to act so shamelessly, don't blame me for looking at you with disdain. If it were possible, he truly didn't want to engage in battle with Tan Feng. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made an exception and allowed the 5 members of the Tan clan to enter. However, He also owed Ling Han, so he definitely wouldn't allow Ling Han to die before he repaid him. At the very least, he wouldn't allow Ling Han to die before his eyes. Tan Feng sneered and said, "No one has ever dared to kill a disciple of the Tan clan. This can't change now. This brat needs to die. If you insist on protecting him, then you'll also need to die. Everyone around you will need to die." How domineering! The remaining 16 demon masters all wore expressions of fury. Tan Feng was being far too arrogant. He had come uninvited into their territory, and now he was even acting with such wanton disregard. Did he truly think that they were harmless statues? "Hey, let me test your skills then," the Overlord Sword Demon Master said as he stepped forward. There was a flickering battle intent in his eyes. Although he had fought the Hysteria Demon Master for countless years, arguing over the problem of who was more powerful, his relationship with him was actually quite amicable. He had purposefully made a bet with the Hysteria Demon Master, and his aim was actually to become family with him through marriage. Thus, he naturally had to step forward and battle alongside him now. "Who else is there?" Tan Feng asked in scorn. "If you want to die, then hurry up and step forward. I'll remember each of you, lest I kill the wrong person in the future." The demon masters were enraged upon hearing this. Which of them wasn't a ruler of an entire galaxy? They were paramount beings no one would dare to disobey. They remained silent as they stepped forward, yet their reply was as clear as could be. "Heh, very well! Very well!" Tan Feng said as he chuckled. He then suddenly looked up at one corner of the sky. One! A golden path materialized in the air, releasing a devastating aura that instantly enveloped the surroundings. Chapter 1570 The Third Elder. 1570 The Third Elder. A golden path appeared, and it brought along with it a powerful elite. It was a man who looked to be around 50 years old. He had a solid build, and his purple hair billowed in the air even though there was no wind. This person was far too powerful, and the demon masters couldn't help but tremble under the influence of his aura. "Earth Demon!" The Overlord Sword Demon Master and the others exclaimed. Earth demons were equivalent to great saints, and they possessed the ability to easily suppress small saints or yellow demons. "Greetings, Senior!" The demon masters all greeted the Earth Demon. This was a supreme elite, and he would be invincible among the dozens of nearby galaxies. His power was undoubtedly tremendous and unfathomable. "All respects to the Third Elder." The 4 disciples of the Tan clan were extremely respectful as they kneeled to greet the Earth Demon. In fact, even Tan Feng bowed slightly in greeting. This was even though he appeared older than this Earth Demon. This supreme elite was called Tan Yun, and he was a paramount elite of the Tan clan. His title, the Third Elder, was proof enough of his power. 2 demon masters in a single clan? The demon masters were astonished. They had heard the disciples of the Tan clan referring to Tan Feng as their 6th elder before, and they had initially thought that this was simply a title based on his age. Judging by the current situation, however, they realized that the Tan clan still had 5 elders ranked above him, none of whom had died. Moreover, the 3rd elder was already an Earth Demon, so just how powerful were their 1st elder and 2nd elder? What kind of force was the Tan clan? This was far too terrifying? After greeting the 3rd elder, Tan Feng immediately turned around to sneer at the Hysteria Demon Master, saying, "Didn't you want to protect that brat? Ha! Come fight us!" The Hysteria Demon Master wore a dark expression. His hands were tightly clenched inside his sleeves, and there was even the sound of his fingers cracking. At his cultivation level, it was already extremely rare that one would become enraged. With him being as lofty as a god, who would ever dare to oppose him? However, who could have imagined that an Earth Demon would suddenly arrive? Before such a paramount being, he was as weak and fragile as a young amateur cultivator. The rank of Demon Master was divided into 4 stages, and the gulf between each stage was profound. Even the so-called star geniuses could only sigh in dejection before the face of such tremendous gulf. "Ha ha!" Tan Feng roared with laughter. It was usually beneath him to act with such haughtiness before juniors, but this time was different. The 17 demon masters had actually dared to oppose him, and this had infuriated him to no end. Pay! Who do you people think you are? Did these mere ants of the netherworld know where he had come from? His ancestor had come from the noble celestial realm, so just a finger of his was hundreds of times nobler than the sum of these people combined. Weren't you all acting pretty aggressively just then? Where's your temper now? Ten Fong continued to denigrate them, jabbing his finger at each of the 17 demon masters as he spoke. His voice was dripping with disdain. Sixth Elder! Tan Yun finally spoke. His voice was extremely soft, yet it caused Tan Fong to immediately tremble and shut up. Tan Yun paused for a moment before asking, Where's the mystery realm? This, Tan Fong said as he scratched his head. He didn't know either. At the time, he had been fully focused on trying to kill Ling Han. As such, he had completely forgotten about the existence of the mystery realm. Upon seeing the look of displeasure on Tan Yun's face, he hurriedly said, Third Elder, this brat killed 10 Mo, and he more so obtained a saint fruit and demonic tools in the mystery realm. Oh? Tan Yun glanced at Ling Han, and Ling Han immediately felt as if he had become completely transparent, with no secrets able to be hidden. He's merely at the medium extreme of the eternal river tier, so how could he have killed them or? He's able to fully activate a demonic tool, Tan Fong added. Tan Yun couldn't help but feel astonished. An eternal river tier elite actually possessed the ability to fully activate a demonic tool. This was incredible. One had to realize that even Tan Mo hadn't possessed such an ability. If one didn't reach the Genesis tier, there was no way they could grasp such high-level regulations of heaven and earth. Capture him, he commanded. It was naturally beneath him to target an eternal river tier junior himself. Tan Fong turned around, and he glared at Ling Han as he said, Does anyone still want to obstruct me? Father! Zhu Xian frantically shook the Overlord Sword Demon Master's arm. If Ling Han was captured by Tan Fong, his only possible fate would be death. The Overlord Sword Demon Master wore a deep frown, yet he eventually chose to remain silent. An Earth Demon was present now, so what more could he do? If he stepped forward, he would simply be asking for death. If he were a lone cultivator, perhaps he could still take a gamble. He could grab Ling Han and then flee. After all, the speed of Genesis tier demon masters was around the same. However, there were other things that he needed to consider, so he didn't dare to take this risk. Meanwhile, the Hysteria demon master also wore a deep frown. He owed Ling Han a favor, so idly standing by while Ling Han was killed would leave an irremovable thorn in his heart. This would directly affect his Dao heart. Father, save him! Wu Ju whispered quietly. Although he hated Ling Han, that was merely a case of children being bitter and competitive. In terms of serious matters, he was still very clear on where he stood. At that time, it was indeed Ling Han who had brought him back to the netherworld. He remembered this clearly. Ha ha ha, a bunch of ants actually dared to challenge a dragon. Tan Fong sneered. He reached over and grabbed at Ling Han. He was feeling extremely delighted at this moment. 1. A burst of sword light flashed over, and a powerful demonic claw streaked through the air. The Overlord Sword Demon Master and Hysteria Demon Master attacked at almost exactly the same time, blocking Tan Feng's attack. Are you seeking death? Tan Feng was wild with rage. The third elder had come, yet these people still dared to resist? Elder! The Hysteria Demon Master clasped his hands in respect as he turned to Tan Yun, saying, Ling Han killed 10 Mo in a fair battle, so don't you think it's unfair to have a Demon Master try to suppress him now? Unfair? Tan Feng roared with laughter. What's fairness? My Tan clan represents fairness, and my Tan clan represents justice. Third Elder, please kill these two people to protect the name of our Tan clan. His words were far too domineering. Was the Tan clan the ruler of the netherworld? How could they be so wanton and unreasonable? Elder! Ling Han suddenly interjected, shouting, I'm from the 8 Stones Forbidden Land, and we have 10 elders in our clan. I've specifically come to the netherworld to train, and the elders of my clan definitely won't let things slide if you dare to target me here. He was simply making things up, and he was conveniently shifting blame onto the 8 stones forbidden land in the process as well. However, the main reason for doing so was simply to buy time. Once Small Tower awoke, he would be able to use the back tower again. At that time, it wouldn't matter even if a heaven demon or earth demon arrived. He wouldn't be afraid of any of them. In fact, he could even turn the tables and kill them all if he desired to. Tan Feng involuntarily faltered upon hearing this. There was an expression of slight worry in his eyes as he turned back to glance at Tan Yun. Just like the Tan clan, that was also a forbidden land. He wasn't afraid of Ling Han, but he was afraid of the force behind him. If the force behind him happened to be more powerful than the Tan clan, then that would cause them no end of troubles. I've never heard of them before, Tan Yun eventually said. As he blinked, there was the image of tens of millions of heavenly bodies forming and dying in his eyes. His aura was profound and terrifying. Ling Han grinned and said, I'm not a member of the Netherworld. In fact, I've come from the immortal realm. Tan Feng shook his head and exclaimed, Impossible! This person fit perfectly with the regulations of the Netherworld, so how could he possibly be from the immortal realm? One had to realize that he had also attempted to enter the immortal realm before. However, the regulations of heaven and earth that he grasped would be forcefully suppressed and erased. If he stayed in the immortal realm for too long, even his cultivation level would start to fall. Thus, even though it was said that one could open the gates to the celestial realm after reaching the high extreme of the Genesis tier and fusing the regulations of the 2 realms, this was actually impossible in practice. Chapter 1571 Blocking 2 Consecutive Attacks. 1571 Blocking 2 Consecutive Attacks. Ling Han completely ignored Tan Feng, and his eyes were only focused on Tan Yun. With a thought, a divine light suddenly burst from his body and soared into the sky. This column of light was so brilliant that it could perhaps be seen from an entire planet away. He was a being from the immortal realm. It really couldn't be any more evident. Tan Feng wore an expression of absolute astonishment, and it was as if he had been slapped across the face. He was rendered completely speechless. This was inconceivable. A measly eternal river tier elite had actually managed to grasp the regulations of the immortal realm and netherworld at the same time? This was turning the impossible into possible. However, he quickly regained his composure and said, So what? Was a member of his Tan clan going to die for nothing? His gaze became cold, and he was just about to launch another attack. Hold it there! Tan Yun suddenly said, stopping him in his tracks. Tan Feng was extremely domineering, yet he was as obedient as could be before Tan Yun. He immediately stepped back respectfully, though there were question marks floating in his mind. Could it be that Third Elder knows about this 8 stones forbidden land or whatnot? Is he apprehensive because of them? Tan Yun gazed at Ling Han, and an idea gradually formed in his mind. As descendants of cultivators who had been banished from the celestial realm, they were all aware of how to return to the celestial realm. They needed to fuse the regulations of the 2 realms. Doing so would allow them to open the gates to the celestial realm. However, in the countless tens of millions of years after being banished, no one had ever managed to achieve this feat. The regulations of the 2 realms were impossible to fuse together, just like fire and water were impossible to fuse together. Regardless of which realm one was in, the regulations of that realm would always suppress and erase the regulations that one had grasped from the other realm. Even coexistence was difficult, so just how difficult would fusion be? Thus, returning to the celestial realm was merely used as a slogan. It was nothing but a dream. Now, however, it was as if they had seen a flicker of hope. They would pour all of their resources into raising Ling Han such that he could help them open the gates to the celestial realm. They would then kill him after entering. In any case, he would be able to open the gates once he became an earth demon. However, there were several heaven demons in the Tan clan. Thus, it wouldn't make a difference even if fused the regulations of the 2 realms and became an earth demon. After all, earth demons were absolutely no match for heaven demons. Entering the celestial realm was a dream of all those who were descendants of those who had been banished from the celestial realm. In fact, the importance of this dream was transcendent above all else, including something as serious as the death of an important clan member. "Don't rely on some forbidden land and whatnot to threaten the Tan clan," he said with a chuckle. He naturally couldn't allow a junior to look down on him, and he continued, "Even Saint Kings will possess nothing but raw power upon entering the netherworld. They'll be inferior to even yellow demons." Ling Han burst into laughter upon hearing this. He was unfazed even in the presence of an earth demon. The Hysteria Demon Master and the others couldn't help but nod in their minds upon seeing this. This young man truly possessed some tremendous courage. "Senior, even I'm able to fuse the regulations of the two realms, so the ancestor of my clan has naturally done so as well." Ling Han started to bluff again. In any case, no one here could call his bluff. If they wanted to, they were welcome to go to the immortal realm to verify his claims. However, Tan Yun was no fool, and he smilingly said, "If an ancestor of the 8 Stones Forbidden Land has already fused the regulations of the two realms together, then wouldn't they have returned to the celestial realm already?" This was a hole in his bluff. Ling Han sucked in a deep breath. He had been too focused on bluffing, yet he had accidentally taken the bluff too far. His mind whirred, and he said, "How can a lowly forbidden land such as yours understand the true power of the 8 Stones Forbidden Land? How about this? I'll block one of Senior's attacks to display the strength of the 8 Stones Forbidden Land." Everyone was astounded upon hearing this. Who else spoke like this? Ling Han was referring to Tan Yun as Senior. On the one hand, yet on the other hand, he was denigrating the Tan clan as a lowly forbidden land. Just how much disdain did he hold toward them? However, this young man was truly quite courageous. He was actually offering to withstand the attack of an earth demon. "Sure," Tan Yun replied calmly. It was as if his emotions hadn't been affected at all. He raised a hand and grabbed at Ling Han. This was only a casual strike. However, just how powerful were earth demons? The power of regulation circulated around his hand, and this was accompanied by the stunning brilliance of tens of millions of heavenly bodies. This strike was so powerful that even yellow demons wouldn't be able to withstand it. He has to dodge this. Otherwise, he'll definitely be caught. Ling Han channeled the indestructible heaven scroll, causing a faint layer of golden light to shimmer around his body. Meanwhile, numerous symbols started to light up on the surface of his skin, their structures so complicated and profound that even heaven demons wouldn't be able to comprehend them. 1. Tan Yun's strike landed, yet it was forcefully blocked by Ling Han. Pooh! All of the demon masters choked in shock upon seeing this, including Tan Feng. Ling Han had genuinely blocked it. A mere Eternal River-tier junior had genuinely managed to block the strike of an earth demon. Was this for real? Was this really not an act? Tan Yun retracted his hand, a look of astonishment on his face. He indeed held a very high opinion of Ling Han, him being someone who had fused the regulations of the two realms at just the Eternal River tier. This was someone who had the potential to enter the celestial realm. However, that was merely Ling Han's future potential, not his current power. How terrifying! What kind of freak is he? However, Ling Han didn't feel too good either. He had faced the attack of an earth demon head-on, and only he knew that several of his godly bones had already been broken. Fortunately, the indestructible heaven scroll was incredibly powerful, and it was able to rapidly heal these wounds. It was just that his origin power had been completely drained after blocking this attack. Right now, he was in a state of extreme weakness. He couldn't hide this from the demon masters, yet it was because they could see this clearly that they were even more stunned. Ling Han had indeed relied on his own power to block the strike of an earth demon. He was truly going to defy the heavens. A fervent expression instantly appeared in Tan Yun's eyes. He was certain that Ling Han had practiced some extremely powerful technique. It was because of this that he possessed such astonishing abilities. If the Tan clan could obtain this inheritance. Gasp! It was most likely because he practiced this cultivation technique that Ling Han was able to fuse the regulations of the two realms. However, he had also claimed that there were 10 elders in the 8 Stones Forbidden Land, all of whom possessed the ability to fuse the regulations of the two realms. Judging by his performance, there was indeed a chance that this was possible. If they all charged over, with their battle prowess not diminishing, would the Tan clan be able to withstand their onslaught? He silently pondered over this. However, he quickly reached a decision in his mind. This was a massive opportunity, and he would obtain it for the Tan clan. Young man, why don't you come to our clan as a guest? If your clan members come, I'll naturally allow them to take you back. He reached over again. Boom! The sky was instantly blotted out by an indescribably powerful demonic hand. How was Ling Han going to block this attack? The ultimate defensive power of the indestructible Heaven Scroll had already been exhausted, and he couldn't enter the Black Tower, either. Ling Han was already out of options. The demonic hand pressed down, yet Ling Han's eyes suddenly lit up, their radiance soaring through the sky. Even Tan Yun faltered slightly upon seeing this. In fact, even he didn't dare to make contact with this light. He hurriedly retracted his hand. This was the light of Tao. Ling Han had received the recognition of heaven and earth after comprehending how to fuse the regulations of the two realms together, and at the same time, the light of Tao had also descended from heaven and earth. Ling Han had absorbed this light with his eyes. By unleashing it now, he managed to block another attack from the Supreme Elite. Fuck! The Hysteria Demon Master and the others were all transfixed with shock. If it were them facing Tan Yun, they would only be able to scuttle around like mice. However, this Eternal River Tier Elite had actually managed to block 2 consecutive attacks from Tan Yun. Although 2 attacks didn't seem like much, this was nothing short of a heaven-defying feat. Even they couldn't help but want to kneel in admiration. Meanwhile, Tan Feng was rendered completely speechless. This young man was truly an unfathomable freak. Tan Yun remained unfazed, and he even smiled as he said, "Young man, what other techniques can you use?" He reached over and grabbed at Ling Han for the 3rd time. How was Ling Han going to block this attack? 1. The large demonic hand reached over, and it was as if both heaven and earth were resonating in unison. When in the netherworld, demon masters represented the will of heaven and earth. How can I block this? What should I do? Chapter 1572 there. As always someone stronger. Chapter 1572 there. As always someone stronger. Ling Han was out of options. He had already used all of his trump cards. Although he could still use some celestial techniques, the limit of his cultivation level meant that he wouldn't even be able to rival yellow demons, much less earth demons. Moreover, now that he couldn't enter the Black Tower, he didn't even have the ability to escape. Fortunately, Tan Yun only wanted to capture him, not kill him. As such, he still had time. Once Small Tower awoke, he wouldn't need to be afraid anymore. Boom! The large demonic hand blotted out heaven and earth as it descended. Hey, old Tan III, how despicable of you! You're actually targeting a measly Eternal River Tier cultivator. Moreover, you've already failed twice. You're truly bringing shame to old Geezer Tan. A teasing voice suddenly traveled over, and it was surprisingly quicker than Tan Yun's attack. Moreover, it clearly traveled into every single person's ears. Pun! Tan Yun's hand descended, yet it was unable to press down no matter what. It was forcefully stopped 30 or so meters from Ling Han. At some unknown time, 2 people had already appeared beside Ling Han. One was a hunchback elder whose hair was all white and who was radiating an aura of age. It was as if he might suddenly keel over and die at any moment. The other person was a sturdy and tall man whose upper body was naked. He was dressed in a beast-skin skirt, and it was as if he were a savage. No one took an extra glance at the savage. Instead, they were all staring at the white-haired elder. This elder didn't appear special at first glance, yet upon closer inspection, one's entire focus and mind would be attracted by him. It was as if their minds had entered a swamp that they couldn't escape from. Everyone was drenched in cold sweat when they finally managed to compose themselves. However, their bodies felt weak, and even their spirit and energy had been drained by a significant amount. Gasp! Who is this old man? Tan Yun had initially been calm and composed, yet he couldn't help but feel surprised now. Friend. Senior, are you from the Eight Stones Forbidden Land? It appears as if you're familiar with our ancestor? Meanwhile, Ling Han was astonished as he gazed at the savage-looking man. That was none other than Go Li. Go Li winked with a smile upon catching his gaze and said, Didn't I say so before? I said that we'll definitely meet again. The other demon masters were all shocked by what they heard. Senior. Tan Yun actually referred to that old man as Senior. One had to realize that Tan Yun was already an earth demon. That being the case, just how powerful was this old man, someone who he had referred to as Senior? There was only one possible answer: this old man was a heaven demon. The old heaven demon chuckled and said, Time truly flies by. At that time, you were still a little rascal who ran around but naked, yet you've already grown up to become a mighty figure who can rule over an entire territory now. The demon masters all wore peculiar expressions. Senior, you're truly skilled at denigrating others. Even though everyone has experienced a similar childhood, saying this before an earth demon elite is probably taking things a bit too far. Tan Yun's face flushed beet red. At his cultivation level, one should have been able to remain calm and composed like a mountain. However, these words had been uttered by a heaven demon, and there were so many demon masters standing beside them and listening. How could he not feel humiliated? Ling Han couldn't help but laugh in his mind. Go Li had most likely been raised by this old man. Both young and old were just as wickedly offensive as the other. However, he liked this. Senior, it appears as if you're familiar with our ancestor. Tan Yun forcefully composed himself, and he resolutely tried to change the topic. The old heaven demon pondered for a moment before replying. That's already a matter from hundreds of millions of years ago. I had initially wanted to cooperate with your ancestor on a matter of great significance, yet it's a pity that old Geezer Tan was far too cowardly. Heh. Great, I've been denigrated again. However, Tan Yun didn't dare to talk back to him. That was a heaven demon. These were beings who stood at the pinnacle of the netherworld and peered down at the world. Their power was simply unfathomable. He pondered for a while before saying, Senior, this person killed a disciple of the Tan clan. Since you're acquainted with our ancestor, please allow me to take him with me. I'm sure that our ancestor will be grateful for this favor. What, are you trying to use old Geezer Tan to pressure me? The old heaven demon humphed, and 2 clouds of black air burst from his nostrils. They then transformed into 2 divine spears that slashed at the sky, instantly causing heaven and earth to lose their luster. A sense of apprehension rose in everyone's heart. At the same time, everyone beneath the level of Genesis tier fell to their knees. They were stunned by this overwhelming aura. Only Ling Han was an exception. He had been recognized by heaven and earth twice, so from some point of view, he could also represent heaven and earth. Thus, his status wasn't lower than that of the Genesis tier demon masters. Tan Yun hurriedly bowed and said, I would never dare to. Just like how he had pressured the Hysteria demon master and the others into obedience before, he was now being pressured into obedience by the old heaven demon. He had no option but to play to his whims. This was the influence of strength. The old heaven demon waved his hand and said, For the sake of old Geezer Tan, I won't press you any further. Go on, return to wherever you need to go. Senior. Tan Yun was unwilling to accept this outcome. That brat had killed a prodigy of the Tan clan, and he more so possessed a paramount secret technique. How could he give up so easily? I'm not asking for your opinion, the old heaven demon said with a humph. He ruthlessly lashed out with his palm. Pa! Tan Yun was instantly sent flying, and he quickly became a small black dot in the distance, disappearing into the vast and boundless galaxy. The old heaven demon then turned around to face Tan Feng and the others, asking, What, do you people also need me to send you on your way? Tan Feng hurriedly shook his head, and exclaimed, No! There's no need to trouble you, Senior. Then hurry up and scram, the old heaven demon humphed. Yes, I'll scram right away. Tan Feng frantically grabbed the 4 disciples of his clan before releasing his golden path and fleeing into the distance. Tan Clan, I'll definitely remember the kindness that you showed me today, Ling Han suddenly said. I'll make sure to repay this favor in the future. Ten Feng suddenly ground to a halt, a murderous expression appearing on his face. He almost gave in to the urge to turn around and smack Ling Han to death. However, upon thinking of the old heaven demon, cold sweat involuntarily formed on his forehead. He didn't dare to make another peep as he fled into the distance. The old heaven demon clapped his hands and said, "The show is over, it's time to leave now." Although his voice was soft, this was the decree of a heaven demon. Who dared to disobey him? The demon masters hurriedly grabbed their disciples and descendants before unleashing their golden paths and leaving. They certainly didn't want to be smacked flying by the old heaven demon. "Young man, come here, accompany me for a walk." The old heaven demon's voice was extremely amicable as he gestured for Ling Han to come over. Meanwhile, Go Li smiled and said, "Filth King Ling, don't be shy. What's there to be embarrassed about? It's not like you're a small girl or anything." Ling Han rolled his eyes in reply. This person couldn't be treated. He clasped his hands in respect and said, "I still haven't thanked Senior for stepping in to help me." "It was nothing," the old heaven demon replied with a chuckle. He started to walk forward, and Ling Han and Go Li both followed beside him, one to the left and one to the right. However, they both lagged a small step behind him. "Young man, I assume that you already know about the celestial realm," the old heaven demon said as he glanced at Ling Han. He had retracted his aura, and he seemed like an especially ordinary old man. "Yes, I do," Ling Han replied with a nod. His answer was short and to the point. There was no need to show off before this kind of powerful being. The old heaven demon nodded and said, "Then that saves me from having to explain." Ling Han didn't interrupt him, and he simply waited for the old heaven demon to continue. "My name is Ouyang Taishan," the old heaven demon said. "Moreover, I also have another identity. I'm the 9th elder of the Heaven Crushing Alliance." Heaven Crushing Alliance. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.